Being on the verge of death, a young man with black hair sat on the balcony railing and thought that he was going to die soon. There was one glass and a small bottle of liquid next to it. Behind the balcony, a crowd of aggressive people was walking on the street, holding pitchforks, axes, and various dangerous objects. They were chasing someone chasing them. The city was on fire and in ruins. The young man thought that everything had disappeared because of the seal of darkness and that he was a cursed child. He looked at the back of his right hand. There was a seal of darkness on the back of his hand. The magic of darkness is forbidden to use. If a person turns to darkness, it will consume him and he will become a demon. Therefore, she was strictly forbidden. The young man thought that with such a mark, he was unable to use any other element like air, light, earth, lightning, water, and fire. He took a small bottle containing poison. After opening this bottle, he poured it into a glass of water, thinking that he was tired and had no reason to live. Because of the poison, the water in the glass changed its color and exuded a poisonous smell. The young man knew that if he went down, people might be hostile to him, and he thought desperately that he had only one option. After drinking a sip of water, he created a dark ball with dark energy in his right hand, thinking that, at least for the last time, he wanted to see what the magic of darkness was. Having lifted the ball with energy, the whole city was covered with clouds, and from the ball there was a dark thread of energy for the whole city. People who saw this sight were very scared and thought that this was the end of the world. The ball of energy grew with great force and dispersed with a bright light. The young man, seeing the power of darkness, was delighted. After using it, he thought he was so calm. And with a slight smile at the last, he leaned against the railing and almost lay down on them. He didn't think about anything except how much he wanted to sleep. An empty bottle and a vial rolled on the floor, spilling the remaining liquid. In his mind, the young man did not regret anything, even if he turned into a demon. Suddenly, he heard a female voice in his head, who was maliciously shouting, asking what was wrong with this body. The young man thought that maybe it was a demon and did not expect it. A woman's voice kept screaming in his head for him to move and stop lying around. The young man was surprised because he did not turn into a demon as he thought. He knew that at least a little bit, but he was special, and he wondered what kind of demon was in his head. The young man coughed violently, covering his mouth with his hand, after which his hand was covered in blood. He drank the poison beforehand so that the demon couldn't harm people. His eyes started to get cloudy and he started coughing violently. His head was spinning, and he thought with regret that it was too early to leave. At this time, the door to the balcony opened abruptly, and a girl came out of it. But the young man was already gradually losing touch with the world, with thoughts of regret that if only he knew about it. The girl, crying, called to him, but he no longer responded. Someone was calling the young man by name, and the next moment he opened his eyes and saw that he was standing among small children. Someone called him by his full name, Alec Arnaus Luxia. Little Alec stood dumbfounded, thinking that he had died and where he ended up. Saints and nuns approached him asking if he was ready and wishing him luck. One of them said that he would definitely receive the Holy Seal. And then, seeing a statue of a saint with wings like an angel in front of him, he slowly realized the words spoken to him. And he was surprised to realize that this was the ceremony of receiving the divine seal. Alec looked around, seeing many small children. He thought that maybe it was an illusion of a demon, but he did not understand how he returned to time because it was impossible. Not understanding, looking around, a little boy with blonde hair stood next to him, talking to himself about how his brother might get a wonderful seal and not what he was. Hearing the voice, Alec suddenly turned to the voice and saw little Ruibert. Ruibert also looked at him in surprise. Looking at him, Alec wondered a little sadly what had happened to Ruibert back then. A little girl with long blonde hair has a white seal on the back of her hand. She was the daughter of the Margrave of Illyria, Iris Illyria. She was nicknamed the Saint because she received the seal of the saint. Alec looked at her, recognizing and remembering her. All the people in the hall began to whisper that she was Mr. Alec's fiancée, so she was still a saint. Noticing his gaze, Iris smiled at him very tenderly. But Alec abruptly turned away. And then suddenly someone got a seal too. That someone was Ruibert, who received the seal of the God of Light. Ruibert had a seal on his hand, and he joyfully told everyone that he had the seal of the God of Light. In the hall, people whispered in surprise that it was a rare seal. Alec, watching all this, thought that everything fits in with the past. Saints appeared in front of Alec, who told him that it was his turn. Alec suddenly remembered a moment from the past where the same saints viciously disowned him, saying that he was a spawn of darkness. He recalled being called the Cursed Prince in the past, and he thought that if he had the seal of darkness again, he would have to relive his past life once more. He thought that if he could, he would choose his own seal. And suddenly, a seal of darkness appeared on the back of his hand. Everyone who saw this seal was scared and shocked. Alec stood in the center of the crowd with his right hand raised, where the seal was. There was a deathly silence in the hall. Even the saints could not say anything, looking dumbfounded at him. Slowly, all the people began to whisper that he had the seal of darkness. His brother Ruibert, who was standing next to him, also thought in surprise that he had a god of light, and his brother had darkness. After such a thought, Ruibert smiled very maliciously and contentedly, covering his smile with his hand. And as if nothing had happened, he wanted to comfort Alec. But Alec suddenly laughed very loudly, saying that it was darkness again. Ruibert did not expect such a reaction. He looked at him in surprise, thinking he was crazy. Iris also looked at him in surprise. Alec was already on the verge of a breakdown, asking in his head that because of the rebirth he had to endure all the horror that had happened in his previous life again. How his loved ones, friends and servants turned away from him. In his previous life, absolutely all people turned away from him. He was sure that even in this lifetime, the engagement with Iris would be terminated. Before his rebirth, Alec literally lived among books, looking for answers to worrying questions about why the seal of darkness appeared in a person, or whether it is possible that he has other properties. Alec even tried to use the magic of other elements to be at least a little useful, and to be recognized by people. The servants who looked at him when he was training back then whispered about how the cursed prince practiced magic even though he couldn't use it, and they mocked him by calling him rude. Remembering all the difficult moments of his past life, he felt that it was not his fault that he received this particular seal. And the mistake of his previous life was that he considered this seal to be a curse, not a blessing. After all, before his death, he learned that he could safely use the magic of darkness without fear of turning into a demon. Now knowing this fact, he decided that in his current life, everything would be different. Grinning very resolutely, he promised himself that he would become the greatest magician of darkness. In a large, beautiful palace, a sunny, warm ray oozed from the windows of the rooms. There were many servants gathered in one of the rooms. Among them, a young male servant asked Alec for a short vacation for a month, trembling in fear of him. This spacious and comfortably furnished room was Alec's room. He was sitting on his bed, listening to the requests of the servants. He sat there and thought wearily that this scene was ridiculous. They could say that they just want to quit right away out of fear. Sometime later, Alec was reading a book of instructions on the magic of darkness. To begin with, he wanted to try to make a fireball, thinking that he would not need knowledge of fire magic for such magic. He tried to simply compress the magic power into a ball. And he managed to make a small ball, but suddenly this ball flew off and exploded. After the fall, Alec thought he'd better not use such magic yet. Thinking that he needed to thoroughly understand the principle of how dark magic works, a demon's voice sounded in his head. The demon was furious and wondered why she couldn't take over the boy's body. Upon hearing her, Alec calmed down aloud, saying that he seemed to be fine. The demon, hearing him, was surprised that he could hear her. The demoness, even more angry, said how an ordinary person could talk to her and told him to just give her the body. Alec flatly refused to give up the body. Stunned, the demoness began to scream even more for him to give up the body. From the loud screams, he mentally just covered her mouth with his hand and told her to be quiet. And suddenly he couldn't hear her voice anymore. Remembering that demons possess the magic of darkness, he cautiously asked aloud if she could hear him. In response, the demoness immediately screamed at him to give her the body, to which Alec, of course, did not agree. Sitting on the floor in his room, he decided to look for information about demons in the archive to learn more about them. Alec was sitting among a mountain of books, trying to concentrate on creating a spell. The most important thing in creating a spell is a clear representation of the final result. Alec sat with his eyes closed, imagining the end result. Alec managed to create a new magic. Now he just needed to practice further. The voice of the servant who called him came through the door. Waking up from practice, Alec looked around his room. The room was filled with traces of dark magic, and there were mountains of books about demons on the floor. After seeing all this, Alec quickly put all the things in his black box. Several servants and maids came to him, pretending to him that they were his personal servants. The head servant, who saw inside the room, was surprised that it was completely empty. Alec awkwardly told them that he had a little cleaning. Changing the subject, Alec asked without formality. And he wanted to tell them that he didn't need any servants, but the head servant interrupted him, saying that it wouldn't do because he was a prince. Alec, thinking about why they were persistent, asked them with a very cold look and voice if they were sure that they wanted to serve him. The head servant looked down at Alec because of the height difference. Through the eyes of the head servant, he was an ordinary little boy. Then the voice of the demoness was heard in Alec's head, mocking him, indicating that they were all addressing him as a child. A little angry at the demoness's words, he ordered the servants to leave and discuss the contract with his brother. The servants, following orders, left his room. Finally relaxing from everyone, Alec rolled to the floor and sat down. Calming down, he thought it was a good thing they hadn't found out about the dark magic, but he did not expect that his dark box would be so voluminous. He thought he would have to check his maximum at the pond. The demoness in his head, mocking him, said that no one wanted to serve him so he could give his body to her. Before he heard the rest of her words, Alec made a sudden leap. With this leap, he moved to another place outside the palace. After looking around, Alec satisfactorily said that this ability is very useful. The demoness inside him was greatly surprised. The demoness, not understanding, asked him how he did it. He replied very calmly that it was a leap and said casually that they, demons, constantly use this magic. She, a little surprised, agreed. He realized that she was a low-ranking demon and thought she was a weakling. The demoness was embarrassed to say that this was not the case and asked him where they were going. Alec stood in front of a large monastery where a nun was marking the road. The demoness didn't like this place. The demoness, a little scared, asked him if he really wanted to expel her. Meanwhile, Alec went up to the nun and called her. The nun looked at him and saw the emblem in his cloak. She whispered in surprise about the emblem. Alec, interrupting her, said that he wanted to go to the monastery. The nun, clasping her hands as if in prayer, began to read and ask for mercy for this child. The demoness, who noticed the seal of darkness in the nun's hand, told Alec about it and asked if it was not bad. Alec told her that it was not a problem and went into the monastery with a nun. Inside the monastery, there was a girl with a pigtail who was marking the floors. She noticed him and happily asked him if he was a beginner. This girl also had the seal of darkness on her arm. Alec noticed everyone inside the monastery. All the attendants were cleaning up the hall, and also everyone had the seal of darkness on their hand. The girl with the pigtail came up to Alec. Alec was the first to introduce himself, giving his name. The girl smiled good-naturedly at him and also introduced herself. Her name was Lena, and she was very happy to meet him. Alec looked at her with a smile, and sadly thought that it was a pity that such good people were here only because of the seal. And suddenly he heard the voice of a demoness, who suggested that he make Lena his follower. He mentally told her to stop talking nonsense because Lena was too young. The demoness wanted to create just the right atmosphere. At that time, Lena asked him why he had come here. He told her that he was looking for a butler and maids here. Lena offered to help him, and he was grateful. They walked through the hall, Alec asking her who she could recommend. He needed the right people. He was telling her that he needed someone he could trust, and I thought in my mind that it would be great if there were such people. Then Lena suggested that he meet Alicia. Lena helped him escort him to Eli's. They left the monastery and approached the cemetery. There was a dead atmosphere in the cemetery. Crows were sitting on the gravestones, further depressing this place. In the middle of the cemetery stood a nun who was digging the ground with a shovel. Lena called her name loudly. Alec saw a nun who turned to look at them. She didn't look like a human, her head looked like a pig. Big eyes and a round nose like a piglet, legs like a wolf with long nails. Alec and Lena approached her and Lena introduced Alec to her. Alec, looking at Alicia, thought that maybe she was a demon. Alicia, after listening to the whole situation, excitedly, fearfully asked them why she was the one. Alec had been thinking all along that she might be a half-orc. Alec thought a little sadly. There were no special prohibitions in the palace, but perhaps everyone would be shocked if the demon became his maid. Alicia noticed his expression. Alicia quietly made a remark to Lena about not telling him she was a demon. Graves. Alicia politely asked for forgiveness, told Alec that she was already taking care of the graves and went further to the graves. In his mind, Alec thought she was a half-blood demon, so damned. When he realized, he thought that maybe she was refusing because she was a demon. Alec wanted to stop her, saying that she misunderstood him. And stepping inside the cemetery, dark magic flew out of the ground. At the entrance, Lena stopped him and grabbed him and pushed him back. When they both saw the dark ball of energy, she said that this is the cemetery of the damned, and therefore dark energy often appears here. Alicia noticed the ball and pointed her hand at it. Lena went on to say that this is why Alicia works here, because with her seal of the Holy Knight, she can easily cope with it. Alicia destroyed the ball with one swing. Alec knew that the seal of the saint and the god of light were very rare and strong. He looked at Alicia and wondered how she worked in the cemetery with such an excellent seal. Alec touched the ground with his hand with the seal, and felt, confirming that the earth in the cemetery was saturated with dark energy. He thought that he did not have the power to destroy this energy, but he could use his dark box. He calls his dark box to him, and she immediately appears on his arm. The dark box immediately begins to suck in all the dark energy that has accumulated in the cemetery. Alicia felt this and began to move away. The dark box was absorbing all the dark energy, and Alec wanted to put that energy completely in the box. If he absorbs all this dark energy, then the very reason for its appearance will also have to disappear. After the dark box absorbed all the dark energy, the cemetery became brighter. There was not the same depressing atmosphere that was in the first impressions. Even the sun shone brightly on the cemetery, making it holy. Alicia and Lena, who saw the whole picture, were very surprised. They were surprised to say that all the dark energy had disappeared. Alec then replied in the negative, saying that the source of darkness was still here. A dragon, or rather a bone dragon, suddenly appeared from the ground. Everyone, greatly frightened, began to run back. The dragon was very aggressive. Alec stood looking at the dragon, realizing that the source of the dark energy was the dragon's corpse. The girls who were nearby asked Alec to run with them. Even the demoness in his head, frightened, told him to run, not stand. But Alec, looking at the dragon without fear, replied to her that they would cope with him. Alex told the demoness that he would create a new spell using previously absorbed dark energy. The demoness, startled and surprised, kept trying to dissuade him from running and not messing around with dope. Alec suddenly created the Cannon of Darkness spell, which completely enveloped the dragon. Alec directed all his dark energy at the dragon. With this spell, Alec instantly destroyed the bone dragon. All the girls looked at it all in great surprise, not understanding how he did it. The source of the dark energy was destroyed, as was the dragon itself. Alec was pleased to think that it was more powerful than he expected. The demoness screamed fearfully and viciously in his head, saying that this was not surprising, because he used a large amount of dark energy. Lena and Alicia were standing behind Alec, who called out to him and looked at him a little scared, waiting for an explanation. Alec, feeling their gaze, awkwardly and actively said that he did not understand how the dragon died. Alicia, as a lifeline, simply replied that perhaps the dragon had self-destructed, pretending that she hadn't noticed anything. Lena believed her, and Alec realized that Alicia understood everything. Alicia went on to say that the presence of the bone dragon had completely disappeared, and that the undead would no longer appear in this place. Alec stood there not knowing what to say to that, and then Alicia took his hands and thanked him with tears. She said that thanks to him, she could safely leave this place. Surprised by this reaction, Alec suddenly remembered his past life, where he was always locked in his room. He did everything he could. Alec hoped that someone would come and free him, just like he freed Alicia. Alicia held Alec's hands, thanking him. It was the first time for Alec because he didn't think he would be the one to save someone. Alicia, still holding his hands, asked to be allowed to serve him. Alec looked at her doubtfully and asked if she was sure. Alec went on to say that working in the palace was good, but warned her that she would meet a lot of sidelong glances and abuse in the palace. She told him with a sincere smile that she did not need money, but just wanted to serve him forever. Alec was a little embarrassed by such sincere words. The demoness inside him asked him if he wanted to make Alicia his follower. Alec agreed and told Alice that he was counting on her. She nodded happily in agreement, and then the demoness signed a contract. And suddenly, Alicia magically turned into a beautiful young girl. Her piggy nose and animal body parts are missing. She grew taller, and her feminine figure was distinct, to which was added a large chest in front. Due to the sudden transformation and the height difference, Alec found himself facing Alicia's chest. He felt dizzy from embarrassment. Lena also stood in shock. Not understanding what had happened, Alicia touched her face, sheepishly wanted to ask how it all turned out. Alec pulled himself together and walked away a little, thinking about the consequences. Alec immediately mentally asked the demoness if these tricks were hers. She defended herself by saying that she then asked if he wanted to make her his follower. Alec said a little irritably that he didn't mean it. Also irritated, he asked about who the followers were. The demoness agreed to answer only on condition that he give her his body. But Alec was so annoyed that, under pressure, the demoness agreed to just answer. The demoness told him that followers are magic similar to human taming spells. The difference was that when someone becomes a follower, then the follower's race changes to the master's race. Then Alec looked at Alicia's changes and understood everything. Alec approached Alicia apologizing and saying that the agreement was a mistake. Alicia stared at him in surprise. Alec told her he would cancel the contract immediately. And then Alicia, stopping him, said that everything was fine, and she really liked her new look. Then Alec thought that really if she looked like a human, then there would be no problems in the palace. Alec agreed and walked on, calling Alicia with him. Alicia was also following him. Lena looked at the two of them and thought about how well it all ended. Lena waved after them, wishing them luck. Alec saw Lena's seal of darkness and stopped walking up to her. He took her hand, showing her the seal, and said that her seal had a blade of darkness. This seal greatly improves her night vision and swordsmanship skills. Lena, when she heard about her seal, enthusiastically asked if he could recognize seals. Alec replied that he understood a little. This skill is possessed by people who have the seal of darkness. Lena enthusiastically rejoiced at her seal, laughing joyfully. She thanked Alec for the information, saying that it wasn't useless after all. Alec just smiled happily at that. Alec remembered his words about becoming the greatest magician of darkness. However, after seeing the joyful faces of Lena and Alicia, he realized that he had helped them both with his seal of darkness. He looked at his hand, he had the seal of the abyss. He didn't know what this seal could be capable of. In his previous life, he suffered from ridicule, and everyone considered him a demon. But now he realized that he wanted to live his new life as the greatest dark magician. And that was his vow. For the sake of his friends, he will master the magic of darkness. Alec and Alicia, holding hands, moved into the palace through the jump. They ended up in Alec's room. Alicia looked around the room. Alec informed her that this was his room. She was surprised that there was such a magic of displacement and praised Mr. Alec. Alec, pointing quietly with his index finger, asked her to tell anyone about it. Alicia joyfully obeyed him because she had sworn allegiance to him and said that this would be their secret. Suddenly there was a knock on the door of the room. It was the butler and the maids. He apologized for bothering him and suddenly saw Alicia in the middle of the room. The butler, surprised, asked Alec who she was. Alec introduced Alicia and said that from that day on she would be his personal maid. The maids behind the butler began to whisper that Alicia might have been a commoner because no one would want to serve the cursed prince. But the butler noticed the seal of the Holy Knight on Alicia and shouted in surprise. After hearing the butler's words, the maids began to discuss Alicia even more, saying that she had a very rare seal, so also to serve the seal of darkness. Alec, hearing the whispers of the maids, knew that in this country people are judged only by their seal. After all, he himself suffered from a terrible attitude in a previous life because of the seal, and he couldn't even leave the room. And then, despite such negativity, Alicia began to defend Alec, telling everyone that Alec was an amazing person and that he had saved her. She wanted to continue further, but Alec stopped her in time, urging her not to tell the details. Alicia understood him, gathered herself, and also defended him, saying that he was simply amazing. And she pointed at him saying that he was just a cutie. At this time, Alec was mentally saying that he was actually an adult. The maids, after listening to Alicia, told her that she was very merciful because she pitied their little prince. Embarrassed even more by the words of the maids, Alicia wanted to prove them even more wrong. Then Alec asked her to calm down a little. But Alec was very happy inside that he had a person who was so worried about him. When Alec came to his senses, he asked the butler why they had come. The butler told him that His Majesty was calling him. Alec and his brother Ruibert were kneeling in front of His Majesty. The aristocrats stood at the back, also bowing to His Majesty. His Majesty Fladius was the Emperor of the Empire of Luxia. He called Alec's name sternly. Sitting on his majestic throne, in front of which was a long staircase going down, the Emperor said that he had heard from Ruibert that Alec was constantly mocking him. Alec was a little confused by the word mocks. And suddenly, at this time, Ruibert spoke up, saying that his brother already had a cursed seal. He asked me not to be so strict with him. The Emperor, after listening to Ruibert's words, was proud that he was magnanimous. And then he sternly pointed out to Alec that he should be ashamed. And he started talking about how maybe the cursed seal was given to him for a reason. Ruibert was maliciously mocking his brother by looking at him. Alec thought they were close before getting the seal, and didn't remember him ever mocking him. The Emperor, pointing his finger at Alec, ordered that he deprive him of the right to inherit the throne of the empire, as well as break off his engagement with Iris. All the people were stunned by what they heard. Among them was Iris, who was also very surprised. Ruibert was also surprised, but for him it was only a joy. All the people in the hall began to whisper about the cruel punishment of the Emperor, feeling sorry for Alec. And then, in front of the Emperor, she opposed Iris. The Emperor looked at her, recognizing her. Iris, in front of the whole crowd and in front of the Emperor, began to firmly defend Alec, saying that he would never do such a thing. Alec, who heard her voice, was surprised. Iris's father stopped his daughter, telling her to keep quiet. The Emperor, who recognized the daughter of Margrave Illyria, remembered that she had the seal of a saint. All the people in the hall started whispering, discussing the situation in front of them. Alec wondered why Iris was protecting him. After all, everything was different in a previous life. Remembering Alec's past life, he had little contact with Iris, especially after receiving the seal. When Alec was 6 years old, he fell in love with her at first sight and proposed marriage. And then they decided to get engaged. But after that, Iris started avoiding him. When they received their seals at the age of 7, he never saw her again. Alec thought that if she didn't like him that much, she could just break off the engagement. But for some reason, she didn't do it. Alec thought that maybe she pitied him because she was a saint, although it was no longer important to him. The Emperor, after thinking a little, said that the saint was still a child and did not understand a lot of things. Iris wanted to object, but her father held her back. Then the Emperor turned to Alec and ordered him to explain himself. Alec listened to the order. Sometime later, loud laughter was heard in Ruibert's bathroom, the owner of which was Ruibert himself. He was sitting in the bathroom and was glad that his father was now completely on his side. Ruibert was sitting on a stool being served by 4 maids who bathed him. Ruibert noticed one of them. She was his brother Alec's former maid. Ruibert began to interrogate her, asking her if she was on his side or not. The maid was a little doubtful, but still agreed that she was faithful to him. Ruibert mocked his brother, thinking that their father was now on his side. She wanted to take everything away from Alec. Ruibert also longed for his brother's bride Iris. He was sure that she would belong to him too. Ruibert's butler came into the bathroom while Ruibert was sharing his plans to capture Iris's heart. He stood awkwardly near the door, having accidentally heard Ruibert's words. The butler, without waiting, told Ruibert the information that Mrs. Iris had left their domain. This news threw Ruibert into an irritated shock that he pushed all the maids away. Ruibert wondered why Iris had left their domain, and then suddenly he thought that she might have gone after Alec. He was so annoyed that it was always Alec. The butler then told him the news of the arrival of priest Barrios, and he was expecting Ruibert. Barrios was an old priest of the Church of Light. Ruibert smiled with satisfaction and told the butler that he was about to go out to him. Barrios, with his several sacred vassals, thanked Ruibert for welcoming them to his palace. Barrios was also the chief priest of the cult of the worship of the god of light. Barrios, with his hidden intentions, sympathized with Ruibert over the fact that his older brother Alec had received the cursed seal. This cult of the god of light sincerely hates all bearers of the seals of darkness. Ruibert replied to the priest that their cursed prince would soon leave the walls of this castle. The priest, falsely upset, said that such people could plunge the entire empire into chaos. Ruibert, without hiding his intention, replied to him that if he explained everything to his father, then his father would deal with the cursed prince. The priest, imperceptibly bearing his creepy smile, agreed with Ruibert's correct decision. Ruibert just needed to scare Alec a little. Ruibert thought that their father used to pay more attention only to Alec, but now everything will be different from before. And he chuckled, thinking that no one else would dare ignore the god of light himself. He wanted to take over the entire empire. Meanwhile, in Alec's room, Alicia was very anxiously asking Alec for further action. Alec, without changing at all, replied with ease that they would do nothing. Alec told Alicia that he had received a small territory on the border of the empire, so they could safely leave the castle. The small area was called Tyrus, and Alicia had never heard of such a place. Alec began to explain, pointing to the map, that this land was not taxed. Most likely there were not even residents there. Alicia was able to read the name of the land. Alec was surprised. Then Alicia said that she studied a little at the monastery. Tyrus province is one of the 11 provinces of the old empire of Luxia. When the empire was called sacred, these lands were abandoned. Alicia said it looks like there are a lot of monsters living there, and she asked how he would manage such lands. Alec told her that it was not necessary. If he becomes a lord, he will have to pay taxes to the empire. Besides, there was no one to rule on these lands. Then there was no need to go there. However, Alec thought that this territory was really meant for people with the seal of darkness. Alec decided to visit these lands anyway. Alicia also wanted to go with him. Alec agreed, and they decided to pack up for the road. On a sunny day, there was an animal race at the stadium. There were a lot of people in the stands. The presenter announced to everyone through the microphone that the race had begun. The presenter commented on each of their actions through a microphone. He was talking about an animal called Lightning Shadow. She was pushing ahead, and today was her debut race. She was already showing incredible results. Lightning Shadow finally took the lead and won the race. The others lagged behind her. Alec and Alicia were sitting in the stands, rejoicing at her and their victory. Even the demoness joined them. Alec and Alicia were standing at the cash register taking the money. People who saw it said they were just lucky. But Alec actually already knew about the results, because in a previous life, betting was the only entertainment for Alec. The cashier collected all the money. The money was the size of a whole barrel. The cashier asked if he could take the whole barrel of money. Alec was thinking of using magic. But suddenly Alicia easily lifted this barrel of money and said she could carry it herself. The cashier was very surprised, and Alec thought that even if Alicia had changed her race, she still had the power of the orcs. Alicia held the side and told Alec to always give her any weights because she was his maid. Alec thought that maids didn't do that kind of thing. Alec summoned his dark box and it quickly absorbed this barrel of money. Alec explained to Alicia that they would use the money to get to Tierras. After all, it takes a whole month to get there. Alec and Alicia walked through the streets to the palace. Alicia suggested that Alec put all his luggage in a dark drawer. Alec agreed and said they would need more horses. Alec wanted to entrust Alicia with the purchase of sleeping bags and clothes. Alicia enthusiastically agreed, muttering in front of her nose that she would choose his underwear and also that only the two of them would go on this trip. Alec, not understanding her words, asked what she was talking about. Alicia replied with a simple joke. The two men approached the tavern. Going inside, they saw a lot of men talking to each other, drinking and having fun. Looking around, they thought they were in a tavern and Alec was here for the first time. One waitress came up to them and greeted them with a polite smile at the Adventurers Guild and showed them the reception desk. Alicia asked Alec if he wanted to register, and he disagreed. Alec went on to say that he was not allowed, but Alicia, if she wanted, could register herself. Alicia replied to him that she would follow his wishes. Then a crowd of men who were sitting at their tables stared at her. Alicia noticed this and warned Alec in a low whisper that they were being watched, looking around suspiciously. Alec knew they weren't looking at him, they were looking at Alicia. Alicia was outwardly a very attractive girl. Her figure was also painted with a maid's costume, which emphasized all the curves of her body, as well as her ample breasts. No wonder all the men started arguing with each other about who would approach her first. Alec understood the whole situation and the atmosphere, whispered softly in Alicia's ear if she didn't like the fact that everyone was looking at her, because she was very beautiful. Alicia immediately replied that this could not be. Her long hair reminded Alicia of her mother. She really liked her hair. Alec remembered that demons had been living in this country for a long time. Alec wanted to ask Alicia about her mom if she was human. Alicia confirmed this and recalled how her mother left her in a monastery at the age of 5, and that she remembers almost nothing about her, not even her name. After a sad memory, she said with a smile on her face that she definitely remembers that she had a good family. Alec looked at her with great relief. Alec suggested that Alicia register because it would be very useful in their journey. They could become an adventurer from the age of 12, and he asked her how old she was. Alicia replied that she was 15 years old. Alec thought that with such an appearance, Alicia did not look like a 15-year-old. Alec further explained to her that during the trip they would be able to fulfill requests and save money from them. Alicia replied that she understood. Alec, with a tanned look, replied to her that there is no such thing as a lot of money, but life is calmer with a large wallet. Alicia, listening next to him, was touched by his tanned eyes. All this time, a little girl as tall as Alec with a mask on her face was standing next to them. She walked past them, and then Alec noticed her, feeling something strange. A girl in a mask with silver-colored hair walked past Alec and Alicia. Alec stared at her, sensing something in her. Alicia saw his gaze and called him anxiously. Distracted, Alec asked Alicia for forgiveness. Alicia immediately asked him if he liked that girl. To which Alec replied that this was not the case. It was strange for him to see a child in such a place. Alec thought about it, remembering the image of that girl. She had silver hair just like Iris. He thought it might be Iris herself, but then he pushed the thought away. Alec remembered how Iris had defended him in front of the Emperor, and he wanted to thank her when they met. And I thought that maybe in this life they could get along. The girl in the mask walked forward and looked at them silently. After Alec and Alicia bought everything they needed, they were met on the street by 5 men in masks and raincoats. They ordered them to stop. They all drew their blades and said they had found the cursed prince. Alicia stepped forward, protecting Alec with herself. Alec was annoyed that 5 men were standing against an unarmed girl and a child. Alec stuck out his hand with the seal, wanted to show them the full power of the magic of darkness. But Alicia, who was standing next to him, told him to leave them to her, mentally imagining Alec praising her. The 5 men began their attack, and then with one blow of her foot, Alicia knocked out one of them's sword. Catching the sword with her hand, she quickly began to attack them, and literally knocked them all down with her punches. All 5 men were lying on top of each other. Alec was delighted with her and praised her, and it was all too easy for Alicia. After all, she had fought the undead in the monastery cemetery, but she had not thought that they would be so weak. Alicia said it was nothing special, and she was only trying for Alec's sake. And then the voice of the demoness who was watching all this sounded in Alec's head. Alec remembered that he had a demoness. The demoness was furious that he had completely forgotten about her. But the demoness told Alec interesting information about how the strength of his followers depends on the strength of their master. In other words, the stronger Alec is, the stronger his followers will be. Alec understood what the demoness was talking about, and he thought awkwardly that if he had used his dark magic, he might have destroyed an entire city. Alice looked at the unconscious men and asked Alec who they were. Alec replied that they were assassins from the cult of the worship of the god of light. Alicia said very calmly that they shouldn't worry, these guys were too weak. Alec replied that they should not relax in any case. Alicia briefly claimed that they were just bandits. Alec thought that perhaps Ruibert had probably put these people up to it, and smiled at Alicia and said that he was not afraid of anything with her. Alec and Alicia, riding a horse, went on their month-long trip to Tierras. It was a little awkward for Alec to sit in front and feel Alicia's breasts, but they rode on anyway. Alec and Alicia were riding a horse on the road to Tierras. Alec periodically used his horse riding spell, thereby shortening his path to tiaras. Alicia suggested that he use the jump right into the tiara. Alec told her that he would not be able to make such a leap, because he must know his destination clearly and he had never been to tiaras. Besides, for Alec, such a big leap was still beyond his strength. After listening to him, Alicia hugged Alec to her and hugged him tightly from behind. Alec, surprised, a little embarrassed, called her. Alicia, hugging him, also told him that she would definitely protect him. Alec just thanked me for that. After the road, they arrived at a place called Lycian. It is about 2 days' journey from Lycian to Tyrus. Alicia happily admired Alec's magic that they had reached Lycian in just half a day. Alec listened to her words with embarrassment and pride. In Lycian, they carried out the task of some of the townspeople and received money for it. They tied up their horse in the stable and approached the hotel. Alec told Alicia that they would spend the night here. Alicia said very enthusiastically that the hotel would have both a bath and a bed. She went on to say that she had heard that maids should help their masters take a bath and change clothes. She asked to be allowed to help him. Alec very politely declined it. Alicia was so upset by Alec's refusal that she even started crying, saying that Mr. Alec was mean. Alec, who saw her reaction, was embarrassed, and he suggested that Alicia cook him something for dinner. Alicia, having heard his proposal, enthusiastically got down to business. Alicia prepared several dishes that looked very tasty. Alec tried one of them and liked it very much. He told Alicia that she had cooked delicious food, to which Alicia thanked him. The voice of the demoness sounded in Alec's head, saying that Alicia's chest was just the perfect pillow. Alec, inwardly embarrassed, told her to shut up. Alicia held several cookies and fruits in her arms, showing Alec that she had bought them when they left the capital. Alec remembered that they had also put ice in a dark box and pulled it out. The ice didn't melt even after 10 hours. Alec suggested that it might be cold in the dark box, but if it were, then other things would freeze. The demoness in him, listening to this, was surprised at every word. The demoness was hysterically asking herself how it was and why they didn't melt. After all, she always melted. She suddenly turned to Alec, awkwardly asking what it meant that even time stops in his mailbox. Alec thought it was true. Alicia was delighted when she heard this information, because no matter what she cooked, everything in the dark box will always remain fresh. Alicia, as always, praised Alec for his ability. Alec, looking at this dark box, thought that the magic of darkness was simply incomprehensible, and he should study the effect of the dark box a little more. Night fell. Alicia was sleeping next to Alec on the other bed. Alec, turning over on the cot, sat down on it. Alec couldn't sleep for some reason, so he decided to practice his spell. He changed his clothes and began teleporting across the roofs of houses on the street, practicing. Suddenly, he stopped at one of them and looked at the night city. A beautiful view of the night city appeared from the roof of the house. Alec looked at it admiringly. He did not think that he would ever be able to see the capital from a bird's eye view. Alec thought about it. He was wondering what the jump limit was. He decided that he needed to experiment while they were on the way. But then suddenly someone shouted from below, asking who was there. Alec looked around and noticed 2 guards on the balcony downstairs. When they heard something, they began to look for the cause of the sound. Alec quietly descended to them using invisibility. The guards did not notice him, telling everyone that there was no one here. The guards passed by Alec without noticing him. Then one of them shouted for Mrs. Iris, looking for her. Alec was surprised to hear her name. Alec remembered the girl who had been in the tavern. He wondered if that girl was really Iris, but he didn't understand why she was acting like that. The guards were all looking for Iris everywhere, calling for her. At this time, Alec used the jump and moved to his room where Alicia was sleeping. Already in the room, he canceled his invisibility spell. He looked thoughtful. He was thinking about looking for Iris. After all, he was her fiancé. But Alec suddenly thought he'd better not do that, because maybe Iris had her own reasons for running away from home. Alec comforted himself with the thought that she was being followed by experienced guards, and he had nothing to worry about. Alec began to wonder. He was deprived of the throne, his engagement to Iris was broken off, and his current life began to resemble the previous one. He didn't know if it was good or bad, but it didn't matter. Alec wasn't going to give up. At this time, a sleepy Alicia also raised her hand, and in her dream she said that she wanted to go after Alec. Alec smiled at her action and looked at her, thinking what a stormy dream she was having. Alicia, on the other hand, lay with the blanket thrown back, fast asleep. The next day, Alec and Alicia rode a horse to Tyrus. Alec informed them that they would be in Lobrian soon, and they got there faster than the Pegasus. Suddenly, behind them, something began to come out of the ground, causing a ball of dust. Alec looked at it, not understanding what it was. And very suddenly, a large snake crawled out of the ground and black crows flew with it. They were all chasing after them at a fast speed. Alec shouted in surprise that it was a snake of death. Alicia also warned him that they were being chased by demonic crows as well. The demoness inside Alec began to worry, and without stopping, she began to tell Alec that the snake was as tall as a dragon and that he could not defeat them. I pointed out to him that he needed to run faster. Alec was too noisy because of the demoness's thoughts, but he also thought that even experienced adventurers find it difficult to cope with them. Alec noticed a city nearby and also saw a group of people who were carrying something on carts, running away from the crows. Alicia, looking at them, said that she couldn't handle the sword even if Alec's magic wouldn't help. She asked him what they would do. At this time, one of the group of people was grabbed by a black crow and dragged to the top. The crow carried him straight to the snake's mouth and let him go. The man was falling right into the snake's mouth. Then Alec told Alicia that they would save them by pulling out his hand with the seal. Alicia was ready. Alec used his seal to cast the Blade of Darkness spell. It's a spell as if she cut it with her dark light. Alicia waved her blade at the crows on the fly, which caused many to fall dead to the ground. Alec and Alicia stayed side by side. They saw a group of people escape to the city in one piece thanks to them. Alicia asked Alec what they would do with them. She suggested that he use their meat in cooking. Alec said that snake scales and fangs as well as raven feathers sell well in the guild. He talked enthusiastically about how they would give as much as 5 gold pieces for one scale. If they sell everything, they can live in the capital for 6 months. Next to him, Alicia was touched by his reaction to money. Alicia cut the scales of the snake for Alec, and also cut the ravens to cook them for dinner. They lit a bonfire in the evening and put the legs of ravens there to roast them. After cooking, they sat and ate delicious food. Suddenly, someone rustled behind the bushes. Alicia became alert and immediately took up her sword to attack the creature. Alec stopped her. A small slug came out of the bushes. Alec and Alicia looked at him. Alec said they were pretty harmless. Alicia suggested that maybe he had fallen behind the group because of the monsters earlier. Alec offered the slug soup. He nodded approvingly and ate some soup. After the slug had eaten, he sat down next to Alec, fawning over him. Alicia said that maybe he liked them and offered to take him with her. Alec wasn't against the idea. Alec took the slug in his hands and asked if he wanted to become his follower. The demoness in Alec's head was asking if he was sure because the slug was very weak. The demoness suggested that he look for someone stronger, but Alec paused irritably, and then the demoness indiscriminately fell silent. Alicia suggested giving the slug a name because she had previously named the horse Hellcord. The slug shone and began to change. Alec kept thinking about what the slug would look like. Images of a young girl and a young boy appeared in his head. But after the transformation, the slug did not change and remained such a round slug. Alicia looked at him and said that nothing had changed. Alec was wondering why it happened. Then the demoness replied to him that perhaps only demons can turn into a human, and she did not know for sure. Alec mentally called her a useless demoness. Alicia kept coming up with a slug name and suggested giving the name to the mini Alec. Alec replied that he needed to think about it. Alec suggested the slug the name Alec. Alicia thought that this name was combined with their names Alec and Alicia and was glad of it, calling Alec a genius. Suddenly, Alec began to move uneasily. Alec and Alicia were asking him what was the matter. A few seconds later, a man who was one of the group of people ran up to them. He calmed down, seeing them that they were safe. He asked for forgiveness for putting them in danger because of them, and he thanked them for saving him. Alec remembered that a group of people were carrying something heavy at the time. The man asked them if they were heading to Labrian. The man advised them to leave as soon as possible, because in the near future the city will fall. The man accidentally lifted his head up, and then Alec saw one big eye. He wasn't human. The demon covered his face quickly. Alec and Alicia, riding a horse, watched the demon return to the city. Alicia said that trouble might be coming soon. Alec agreed with her words. The city of Labrian is ruled by a lord. Demons have settled on its shore. The main defense of the city was high walls. Alec knew that the port there was protected by chains, and it was impossible to attack from the sea. Alec wondered that, with such protection as a demon, he was sure that the city would fall soon. He told Alicia that he couldn't believe the city was in danger anytime soon. Alicia also agreed with his words. Alec thought about it, remembering fragments of his past life, where it was mentioned that the city of Labrian was destroyed. Alec remembered exactly this moment, where the knight reported to him, the emperor and Ruibert, about the destruction of the city. Alec remembered everything and decided to meet with the lord of the city. After all, if everything continues like this, many people may die. Alec and Alicia passed through the great gate into the city of Labrian. The walls that protected the city were very high. Each entrance had bars that went up to the top when opened, as well as guards who guarded the gate. Inside the city, the residents went about their business and whispered among themselves about the imminent attack of demons. Some guards ordered demon servants to carry weapons and other supplies to prepare defenses. Alec and Alicia went further inside and stopped at the palace. They also met the lord of this city there. Alec apologized for the unexpected visit from the lord. The lord, on the contrary, smiled good-naturedly, saying that it was an honor for him to receive him. The lord very politely asked Alec the reason for his visit. Alec replied that his majesty had granted him the lands of Tyrus. The lord was surprised at this, asking if he was heading to these devastated lands. Alec calmly agreed and said that he wanted to explore these lands. The lord, after listening to him, was a little upset and asked for forgiveness because he could not provide Alec with people to accompany him as they were preparing for the defense of the city. Alec replied that he didn't need bodyguards. Alec told the lord very seriously and decisively that he wanted to help prepare the city for the assault. The lord froze a little in surprise, digesting the words. After a moment, the lord restrained himself from laughing in Alec's face. After all, Alec was still a small child to talk about such things. Behind Alec was Alicia, who frowned at the lord. She said it was rude of him. The lord began to ask for forgiveness and justify that, due to Alec's age, he involuntarily smiled. Alec went on to say that on the way they met residents of the city who were carrying chains. The lord replied to him that they might have seen demon slaves. He ordered them to bring chains to restore the coastline. Alec remembered the face of the very resident who had approached them. He realized that this resident was a half-blood Cyclops. The lord told them not to worry because they were just slaves, free labor. He would never involve people in such jobs. The lord continued to claim that they were just demons. Alec looked at Alicia with concern. She looked upset after hearing the words from the lord. Alec asked the lord if he could inspect the chains. The lord, without resisting, agreed. Alec and Alicia rode on horseback to inspect the chains. Alicia suddenly called him and asked if he really wanted to help such a person. Alec looked at Alicia's cold face. Alec told her that he didn't want to help him. He went on to say that there are many people in the Empire who are not so cruel to demons. If nothing is done, they will all die. Alec and Alicia walked through the streets of the city. There were civilians everywhere, smiling at each other and helping. After a short silence, Alicia asked him if this city was really in danger. Alec replied that the lord would not panic so much over empty words. They remembered the words of the Cyclops, who said that the city would soon be destroyed. Alicia asked what happened because of Cyclops' words. Alec replied that it was better to check for sure. Alicia looked at the slave demons and said with sadness on her face that demons were being mistreated in this city. Alec replied that they were afraid of a demon invasion. Alicia sadly began to voice her thought that when she was a demon, she stopped in mid-sentence. Alec completely understood her without words, thinking in his head that not all people are capable of accepting demons. They arrived at the doors of the defensive wall. 2 guards stood near the entrance. Alec came up to them and said that he had come to inspect the shore side. The guards blocked the entrance to the wall with their spears, preventing them from passing. The guard said they wouldn't let the child in there. The second of their guards continued to tell him not to disturb the adults because the prince was coming to check soon. And suddenly, they both noticed the royal emblem on Alec's clothes. Realizing their mistake, the 2 knights began to apologize to Alec, justifying themselves by saying that they did not think that he would look so young. Alec didn't say anything, and Alicia was standing behind him, glaring at the guards. The guards let them in and began to show the port's defense line. The entrance from the sea has been temporarily opened. Chains hung on the water, which were attached between the walls of the defense, thereby blocking the entrance to the city further. The guard pointed at the chains, saying that they were currently strengthening the chains in the water. Cyclops swam in the water, repairing and strengthening chains. Alicia, recognizing one of them, said that they had previously met that Cyclops. Alec also looked at him, confirming. A familiar Cyclops controlled the entire process in the water and gave out tips on strengthening. Alec thought it looked like he was the leader of this group. The guard further informed them, saying that they were well trained in blacksmithing besides possessing superhuman strength, so they were responsible for these chains. He asked not to worry about them because they demons were loyal to them. After listening to the guard, Alicia muttered in front of herself, saying that a human, it does not affect abilities. Alec agreed with her. He thought they were oppressed from birth simply because they were born demons. After watching the Cyclops do their job, Alec thought that their abilities really should not be doubted. Alec told the guard that he wanted to see the whole chain. The guard was surprised for a moment, not knowing what to say. Alec said once again that he had to personally see the condition of the chain. He mentally thought that the lives of hundreds of people depended on it. The guard listened to the order and went to execute it. The guard went to the lever and pulled it down. Then the sounds of a chain slowly rising were heard. The chain rose from the water. It was in terrible condition and almost completely broken. When Alec saw these chains, he shouted that the chains were broken, and that they would not stop the demons in any way. Alec ordered the guard to report this to the Lord and request more people to work. The guard hesitated for a moment, and then Alec told him to do it, and that he would take responsibility for himself. The guard then went to execute the order. Alec took Alicia's hands and teleported closer to the sea to the roof of one defensive wall. From the height of the roof, they saw many ships approaching the city in the distance. Alec pointed at them. When Alicia saw the ships, she said that about 100 ships were waiting in the bay. Alec replied that they might wait until nightfall and launch a surprise attack. Alicia then pointed out to Alec the Cyclopes that had fled from the shores directly into the city. The Cyclopes fled in panic, saying that the chains would not hold them, and asked the main Cyclops Julius what to do. Julius suggested that they flee the city. But Alec and Alicia appeared on their way and stopped them. The Cyclopes froze in surprise, preparing to attack. Julius remembered that he had seen Alec and Alicia. When they were running from the big snake and the ravens, they saved them. Julius asked them to let them through because there were children among them who needed to be saved. And then Alec asked them where they were going to run away. He said he didn't think they would be welcome in the demon kingdom. Alec ordered them to surrender. But Julius got angry at these words and thought that if they did not escape, they would all die. Julius ordered his relatives to run forward and said that he would detain them. His friends wanted to dissuade him. Alicia asked Alec to be merciful to them. She was ready to follow any order. At this time, Julius took his hammer and swung at Alec. Julius struck right at the place where Alec had been standing before, who managed to dodge. Alicia looked at this situation and froze a little. Julius raised his own and wanted to swing his hammer again. He was shouting at his relatives to run away, and he was thinking about buying a little more time. At this time, Alicia took out her sword and angrily said that as a demon she sympathized with them, but she would not spare anyone who wanted to harm her master. Alicia launched her attack towards Julius. Julius dodged her attacks as best he could. He thought she was very fast. His friends were standing behind Julius and worried about him. And Julius pleadingly shouted at them to run away from here. And when Alicia wanted to make her last attack, Alec used the barrier of darkness and saved Julius, who was already ready to give his life. Julius looked at Alec's magic and remembered that he had destroyed all the demonic ravens with the same magic. All the Cyclopes stared at Alec in surprise, asking about the magic of darkness. Alec, who was still using the barrier, told them that he was a little special. Alec stopped the fight and informed all the Cyclopes about the misunderstanding, because he was not going to hand them over to the guards. All the Cyclopes stared at him in surprise, not understanding. Alec showed them his seal of darkness and said he was the same. The Lord arrived at the defensive port and asked the guards if they had found the fugitives. The guards replied that they had not found it, and also that they were combing the entire coast, but they could not find the prince either. The Lord became very angry, and angrily shouted to the guard that if something happened to the prince, he would personally cut off their heads. The guards began to work even more actively out of fear. The Lord then asked him about the repair of the chain. The guard also sadly replied that the chains were badly damaged and would take many days to repair. The Lord became even more angry and desperate from what he heard, saying that Labrian was finished. And then Alec suddenly appeared and told him that he was in trouble. The Lord was delighted to look at Alec. He was glad that the prince was safe. Alec asked the Lord for forgiveness and told them the bad news that the demons had escaped to the demon kingdom. The guard who heard this said that if they had escaped to the demon kingdom, then it was impossible to bring them back. The Lord looked even more saddened. But the Lord pulled himself together and with a smile on his face, thanked Alec for his help. He said that Alec had done everything he could and the work at the port was not over yet, so they would have to strengthen the defenses here. At that moment, Alec suggested to the Lord that he could help repair the chains. He called out to the people standing behind him and pointed at them. Alec told the Lord that he had signed a contract with the masters to restore the tiara, and he thought they could help. The Lord was surprised by this information and asked Alec in surprise, pointing at them if they could fix the chains. And suddenly an idea crept up on him. A moment earlier, Alec had shown all the Cyclopes his dark seal, saying that he was the same and he couldn't let them escape and they couldn't run far. Alec told them that he could help them. The Cyclopes all stood watching him, a little doubtful. Alec went on to say that if they become his followers, there is a possibility that their appearance may change. Alec offered them a contract with him instead of running away, and he promised them that he would take care of them. The demoness inside him said that even if they tried to escape from him, she could easily catch them. The Cyclopes, after listening to him, stood in doubt, telling him that he was a man and they could not believe him. And then Alicia gave her voice, drawing all the attention to herself. Alicia attracted the attention of the Cyclopes and told them that Mr. Alec was the sixth prince of the empire, pointing to him. Alicia started saying to herself that she was a demon too. She said that she had become a follower of her master and had assumed her current form. All the Cyclopes froze in surprise looking at her. Then Julius asked Alec why he needed to help them because the city was over anyway. And then Alec told them that he understood everything. Alec showed his seal once more, and all the Cyclopes recognized him as the Seal of Darkness. Alec also went on to say that even if Julius really hated people, he would not have warned them about the danger in the forest. Alec said they needed help and he wanted to help. Tears welled up in Julia's eyes. He said that he thought that if they ran away, they would be able to live in peace. Julius, already completely crying, said that the price of this would be the death of many lives. Alec patted him on the head and said he understood. Alec told them very enthusiastically and decisively that they would save Lobrian. They just needed to restore the chains. All the Cyclopes looked at him with more believing eyes. And just like Alec, they were filled with determination to save the city. All the Cyclopes agreed to make a deal with Alec. The demoness was ready and made a deal. After the deal was made, all Cyclopes changed their race. Julius turned into a young girl. All the other Cyclopes also changed their appearance. They all looked at their bodies in surprise. Alicia was also happy, holding Alec's joyful slug on her arm. She looked at Alec and wondered if maybe one day Alec would be able to become a human. Alec was very surprised that Cyclops Julius would turn out to be a girl. Because of the transformation, all Cyclopes were without clothes. Alec was embarrassed in front of Julius, and he turned his back, asking Alicia to give them clothes. Alec suggested that Alicia teleport to a clothing store because it was just opened in the city. Alicia also admired his talents. After all the events, the chain was restored and the defense was able to become perfect. Lord greatly admired this work, praising Alec. The Lord said that at this rate, they would fix all the chains in a moment. He praised the craftsman who repaired Alec's chains. Alec was glad to hear that. Julius and her companions repaired all the chains in the water. Alec suggested to the Lord that he should evaluate people by their skills, not by race. The Lord, after listening to him, told him that he had already lost any hope of protecting the city. But thanks to Alec's masters, he would be able to believe in it again. The Lord suddenly asked Alec if he really wanted to develop Tyrus as his land. Alec did not understand the essence of the question and did not answer immediately. Alec wanted to create a home in Tierras for everyone who was very dear to him, namely the estate. He wanted to create a place where everyone has a place where they could live in peace. Alec imagined how happy all his dear friends were, how they were all around him where he felt at home. Alec remembered that in his previous life, the empire had fallen after 13 years. But he wanted to change that. Even if the empire was destroyed, he wanted to protect his friends at all costs. He was determined to change Tierras and create a real paradise there. Tyrus, in his mind, was a very beautiful city where everyone lived happily with each other. No one divided by race or by seal. All his friends are happy, just like he wanted them to be. He gathered all his friends and resolutely led them to the Tierra. He wanted to see their lands. In the lands of Tyrus, Alec, Alicia, and Julius were attacked by monsters. Julia defended herself as best she could, but her strength was running out. Julia was already in tears, telling Alec that she couldn't fight anymore. Alec has also fought monsters before, and Alec thought there was nothing in the Tierra. Suddenly, even more monsters started attacking these three from all sides. Alec was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Some time ago, all the Cyclopes stood waiting in front of Alec. The demoness was glad that Alec had even more followers besides Cyclopes. Julia happily told about her family that they had earned money in blacksmithing and mining for many generations, and they were confident in their skills. Alec told them that he was counting on them. Alec looked at the Cyclopes, who were happy. He thought about the fact that there are about 30 people in the Julia clan. Although he had a lot of money, but with so many mouths, the money would be enough for several years. He thought that in order to earn more money, they needed to return to the capital. Alec told everyone that they needed a source of income. First of all, Alec thought that they needed a plan to earn money. He knew that if nothing was done, they would not be able to live here for long. In the city of Lobrian, the Lord asked Alec if he wanted to cooperate with him. The Lord said that since your highness asked for it, Lobrian would definitely help. After the conversation, they drove to a large workshop and stood in front of a large and beautiful building looking at it. The Lord pointed to this building, informing everyone that there were shops and a large workshop here, and it was right on the main street. Once inside, they examined the building from the inside. The building was not empty, but filled with things and furniture. Everyone was in joyful surprise, looking at the bed, the bathtub. Many thought they could live here. Alec stood there not knowing what to say. The Lord said that he ordered the chains here and could not entrust such work to demons. The Lord was glad that there were only people here. All the Cyclopes, who had changed their race, looked at the Lord with a frown. Alec saw their reaction and told them not to take it personally. Then Alec called Julius. Alec asked her if he could leave her the collection of materials and the creation of weapons for sale. Julius answered him with confidence so that he would not worry. Alec also asked her to find out what could be mined on their territory. They were very familiar with the materials. Julius asked about the ore and said that she had worked in the mine for 3 years, so she knew a lot. Alec thanked Julius. Meanwhile, Alicia, holding the slug Alec in her hands, was a little upset that perhaps in the future she and Alec would not be able to travel together now. Alec ordered Julius for now just to explore the ore and find out what kind of ore is in tiaras. Julius replied that she understood. Alec held Julius's hand in support. Alicia was too surprised when she saw this. Alicia ran up to them very quickly, and suddenly she grabbed Alec's other hand. Alec didn't understand what had happened. Alicia began to cry, asking Alec why he was leaving her. Alec was a little confused and replied to her that this was not the case. Alec turned back to the other Cyclopes, saying that he was counting on them. All the Cyclopes answered him in unison, "Don't worry." Alec was still holding Julius's hand. Eli asked him where they were going. And then Alec held the hands of the girls who were standing side by side and teleported to another place with them. Julia was a little shocked by such a teleport. They ended up on the rocks further than the city. Alec said that he tried to teleport as far away from the city as possible. Although this place is called the Territory of Demons, it's not so scary here. Julius admired Alec's magic, which teleported them to another place in an instant. Alicia was proud of him, saying that it was a mere trifle for Alec because he could do more than that. Alec awkwardly asked them to stop. Alicia continued by asking Julius if she could use magic. And with a proud head, Alicia said that she possessed holy magic. Julius stood there not knowing what to say, and she showed her hand where the seal of darkness was visible. She looked at the hand and said she didn't know exactly what her seal could do, and she wasn't sure what was related to magic. Alec looked at the seal and recognized it as the seal of the Hammer of Darkness Mjolnir. Alec said it could be used for dark and lightning magic. Alec also said that the seal is useful in blacksmithing. Julius was surprised by his words and asked if it was really so useful. Alec replied that he wasn't entirely sure about the dark magic, but she could definitely use lightning magic. Julius enthusiastically asked Alec if she really could use magic, to which Alec agreed and told her that it was the same as using basic magic. Alicia stood sadly to the side, watching their dialogue. And Alicia couldn't stand it anymore and screamed that it wasn't fair and that she wanted it too. To which Alec replied that she could use magic anyway. Alicia awkwardly said anyway that she forgot to use magic. Julius sat down and thought about her magic and what could be useful to her master. But suddenly, while Alicia and Alec were arguing, a large shadow hung over them and Julius noticed it. A large demon snake loomed behind them like a big shadow. Alec immediately pulled himself together, pointed at the demon and ordered Alicia to attack together. Julius was terribly scared of the demon. Alec cut the snake in half with his blade of darkness. The snake's body collapsed to the ground, right at Julius' feet. Alec, who noticed more monsters, said that the snake was not alone. Alicia picked up her blade and began to attack the flying monsters. While Alec and Alicia attacked the demons, Julius froze in fear, not knowing what to do. Alicia shouted at her to get up and pull herself together. Julius was attacked by a large crow. Julius screamed at the crows to get away from her out of fear. But the crow flew at her even more and Julius lost his balance and fell down the cliff. Alec noticed it but didn't have time to catch her. And then Alec quickly jumped himself, Julius and Alicia, to another place located below the rocks. The forest was already beginning at the foot of the cliffs. The monsters stayed on the cliff looking for them. Exhausted, Alec was surprised that Lobrian was still intact with so many demons in the neighborhood. Julius, having learned the location, said that somewhere here she was captured by imperial knights, and now they are on the northern border of the territory of demons. Alec, after hearing what he had heard, wondered what they should do now. Julius, a little upset, said that they had teleported quite far away. Alicia said that she did not know any territory where there would be so many demons. It was very difficult for ordinary demons to survive in such conditions. Alec looked around the area a little confused, where there were different demons in each place. He asked himself what kind of demon kingdom it was. Alec looked up to where the big demon crows were flying. And I thought in my head that now I understand why the Empire doesn't come here. A large demon in the form of a cat appeared next to them, noticing them. They looked at him in horror. This demon started attacking them, but they deftly managed to disappear from this place with the help of a leap. But with each jump, they met even more demons in new places. After many jumps, they found the entrance to the cave and hid there. It was very dark inside, and all three of them were sitting exhausted. Julius said with fear that wherever they went, there were demons everywhere. Alicia said there might not be a safe place here. Alec replied that not everything could be that bad, and there should be a place somewhere. And suddenly, inside Alec's head, the demoness spoke very awkwardly that she was afraid of the dark. And I asked him to add some light. Alec, perplexed, mentally asked her that she was a demon but afraid of the dark. The demoness told him what was wrong with that. Alec told her that he hadn't brought a torch with him. The demoness suggested that he use magic. Alec mentally replied that he couldn't make, for example, a firefly or a fireball, he didn't own one. Then the demoness pointed at Alicia and said that she could use the holy light. She suggested that he just use it. Alicia noticed Alec's gaze on her and she was excited. Alec hesitantly asked the demoness if he could use it, to which the demoness replied that she had talked about it. The demoness told Alec that the master can use any abilities of his followers. Alec thought she hadn't talked about it. Alec wondered uncertainly if he could really use them, and after a while he cast the holy light spell. And then a small light ball appeared in front of him, which illuminated not so much space. Alicia saw this and said she would help him. Alicia also cast the holy light spell. And then that holy ball of Alec's increased in size and rose up, illuminating the entire space thanks to Alicia. Alec further wondered if this was due to the number of his followers. After all, with the addition of 30 followers, his magic power had increased. Alec thought that even though the spells weren't that strong, it might be useful. Suddenly, Julius turned to Alicia that she was amazing. Julius, with a frustrated expression on her face, said that she admired Alicia, but she couldn't say that about herself because she couldn't fight and she was very scared. Julius began to cry, asking for their forgiveness. Alec and Alicia looked at her awkwardly. They started cheering her on. Alec said it didn't matter that she couldn't fight, but she could work with ore. Alicia also supported him, saying that she could leave all the battles to her. Alicia had told her that after practicing, she would be able to use magic and even lightning. Julius looked at her gratefully with tears in her eyes. And suddenly, from the depths of the cave, the face of the snake demon appeared, looking directly at them. Alec and Alicia noticed this face while Julius was wiping tears from her cheeks while smiling. Julius turned around, not understanding what they saw there. And everyone was terrified, using the blade of darkness to leap to another place. All three of them were lying on the grass, exhausted from another adrenaline rush and a monster. Alec already thought it was time for him to retire. After a while in the evening, all three reached the city safely. In the palace, Alec calmly took a bath. He was helped by several servants who brought him a towel. And after the bath, Alec, Alicia, and Julius gathered in the room, exhausted from a busy day. Alec suggested they come up with a better strategy. Julius sadly reflected that she could not help her master at all. Alicia noticed her sad expression and called her over. Alicia told her with a kind smile that she could rely on her, mentally thinking that they were not rivals. Julius looked at her with admiration and her eyes filled with tears. Alicia told her to do everything possible for Mr. Alec together. Julius agreed with her and her mood improved noticeably. She resolutely asked Alec to take some material. Taking some material, Julius began to sew them quickly. Her end result was a neatly and beautifully sewn mattress with a pillowcase. She pointed to the mattress and said that she had sewn them from snake skin, and she wanted Alec to have a good rest and sleep today. Alec touched the mattress and was surprised by her abilities, asking what she could do even like that. He said admiringly that she had made such a first-class product in just a couple of hours. Alec grabbed her hands and praised her, saying that she was doing well, and thanked her for such a thing. Alicia saw this scene and also started saying that she had very smooth skin and still thought that Julius was her rival. Alec didn't understand what she was saying. There are many customers in the workshop during the day. A man in armor came with his sword and scabbard in his hands, saying that he had heard that weapons could be repaired in this workshop. On it, in a wicker basket, several pieces of snakeskin fabric are neatly arranged, each of which is filled with magic. One of the customers approaches the man behind the counter to thank him because the knives she bought from them the day before turned out to be very sharp, which she clearly liked. Alec looks with a satisfied smile at how the workshop is thriving. Alicia, standing next to him, says that if they continue at the same pace, they will have a stable source of income. However, Alec is not so optimistic. He is clearly worried that even if they now have enough funds for everything they need, they also need to think about the future. Because then they will have more people, and in this case, their income may no longer be enough. After a while, Alicia brings a lot of books and scrolls and puts them on the table, saying that she found the records of the tiara. Alec looks at the map and realizes that there is most likely a castle on the island. He says they could check out the island and, if anything, defeat the demons living there. Alicia says that as soon as the waters in the sea calm down, the monsters should also retreat. Then Alec decides to make this island their capital. He suggests that the girls immediately go on a trip, which they gladly agree to, and Julia says that today she will just show everything she is capable of. Alec quickly jumps into Alec's arms. Alec realizes that he wants to go too, so he picks him up. Before sending, Alicia, with a pretty smile, offers the gentleman to hold hands, but he does not hear her words at all and makes a sharp jump. All four find themselves in a forest in an unfamiliar place. Alec walks up to the cliff and looks around, roughly noting which way Eris Island is located. He turns around and notices Alicia, who mumbles something about a hand with a sad look and holds out her hands to him. He looks at her blankly at first. Then he finally understands what she means. He tells her that his magic power has increased, so now he doesn't need physical contact to jump. The master's words upset her so much that tears begin to flow from her eyes. She starts crying loudly, shouting that this is completely unfair, and at this time Julius is trying to calm her down somehow. After she calms down, Alec says he will continue to teleport to avoid encountering demons. Since Alec uses the jump many times when they encounter giant demons, he also uses invisibility to hide from them. Until at one point, Elijah points somewhere, wanting to draw her master's attention there. Finally, they notice the coveted island in front of them, on which there are many forests and buildings, including a castle. The streets are completely abandoned and full of dirt and overgrown foliage. Alicia says that the city turned out to be even bigger than she expected. Alec appraisingly examines the area and notes that more than 100 people will be able to settle there. Looking around, he assumes that they are in an administrative area. He invites his companions to go to the city center. He notes that apparently there are no more demons left on the island, except for small ones the size of birds. An unpleasant expression appears on Julia's face. She remembers the crows with dislike. Suddenly, Elijah points somewhere, asking fearfully what is there, as if she noticed something terrible. This scares Julia very much, until she realizes that it was just a joke. Alicia laughs at her and jokingly calls her cowardly, and she asks why she did it at all and resentfully asks her not to do it anymore. Suddenly, Alec notices some rapid movement on the ground. Julius does not take his words seriously, as he decides that the gentleman also decided to make fun of her as well as Alicia. However, after that, they both notice a small mouse on the ground. Suddenly, unexpectedly for them, the mouse emits a loud squeak. In the next moment, all three of them look up and see several aggressive demonic ravens coming at them from above. Alec stands in a stupor and looks at the ravens, not believing that it was the mouse that summoned so many demonic ravens. Alicia is not afraid and resolutely prepares for battle, saying that there are not so many demonic ravens. She wants to deal with them faster and then use their meat for dinner. At this time, Julius is scared, trying to wave away the crows, squinting and closing his eyes. Suddenly, one of the crows grabs the mouse in its claws and lifts its small body into the air. The mouse squeaks and gets scared. However, suddenly the raven who is carrying away the mouse is struck by a blow, namely the blade of darkness. After that, Raven lets her go. The mouse falls to the ground on its back, after which it gets up and quickly runs away somewhere. In the end, Alec, Alicia, and Julius were able to defeat all the demonic ravens. Alicia looks at the bodies of the ravens and asks the others what they should do with the remains. Alec takes out a dark cube and says that he will put them away for now, as the smell of blood may attract other demons. Alec uses a dark box. A mouse is watching all this. She looks sullenly around the corner and squeaks softly. Alicia hears a squeak and turns around at the sound. She says the mouse is back. Julia doesn't like it at all, since it was the mouse that set the demonic ravens on them. Alec looks at the mouse and notes that the mouse is most likely quite smart. He assumes that the mouse may be useful to them, so he suggests catching it. Julius and Alicia try to catch the mouse together, but she very deftly escapes from both of them without being caught. This continues until Alec intervenes. He suddenly jumps out and flies straight at the mouse. She doesn't have time to dodge and gets stuck in his body. Alicia is happy and with a smile praises Alec for his work. Meanwhile, Julius gets upset because it seems to her that she is of no use again. At this time, Alec takes the mouse and grabs it by the scruff of the neck. The mouse squeaks in fright and tries to escape with all its might. Alec tries to calm her down and says they won't touch her. Alec says that since she is a pretty smart mouse, he offers her to sign a contract with them. He also promises that he will not harm the mouse. He offers the mouse to become his follower with a friendly smile. The mouse is being careful, but then he nods slightly uncertainly at the suggestion. At this time, the demoness mockingly jokes at Alec that he is calling all the garbage to him again. Alec ignores her words. At this time, Julius and Alicia are looking with interest at the mouse, which confidently stood right in front of them. Alicia assumes that the mouse, like Alec, will not turn into a human. Alec agrees with her assumption. However, the next moment, the mouse in front of them suddenly increases in size several times. The mouse looks around in fright, not understanding what happened. Despite this, she never turned into a human, but Julius notes that she at least stands on her hind legs. Suddenly, the mouse opens its mouth and starts talking. He asks fearfully what Alec was doing to him and why he became so big. Alec, Julius, and Alicia are very surprised that the mouse can now talk. Alec, a little hesitantly, explains that this happened because he became her follower. The mouse accepts this explanation. He says that Alec looks strong enough, so he will be happy to try for his master. Alec praises the rodent for speaking so well. Alec says that if he helps him, Alec promises to feed him regularly and well. At this time, he holds out a box with a delicious lunch that was prepared by Emilia. Looking at the deliciously cooked food, the rodent quickly and happily agrees. After that, Alec asks the rodent what his name is. He asks with incomprehension what this means, since this is the first time he hears about it. Then Alec undertakes to come up with a name for him. He suggests that since the rodent lives in tiaras, it may be called Tia. He says he doesn't mind that name. Having dealt with this, Alec asks Tia about which building is the largest on this island. Tia replies that this is a simple question and points out the necessary direction. Alec, Alicia, and Julius are looking in that direction. Tia, in turn, warns them that they should stay away from this place and not get too close to it. Alec curiously asks why they shouldn't go there. Tia, with a scared expression on her face and trembling, says that a fiery beast lives in that place. Tia says that as soon as his crows flew closer, they all immediately fell dead, unable to get closer. Alec then reflects on Tia's words about the fire beast. Julius, slightly frightened by Tia's stories, suggests that the fiery beast may be a spirit. Alicia, upon hearing this, confidently offers her master to rely on her in this matter. Alec is happy about this and agrees, saying that in that case it's time for them to go there right now. Julius is clearly not happy with these words and looks clearly scared. Alicia confidently walks ahead of everyone and Alec follows her, not lagging behind. Julius walks fearfully from behind, fearfully asks if there will be ghosts there, clearly not wanting to go there. Arriving at the right place, Alec, Alicia, and Julius look at the huge, massive castle. It doesn't look as abandoned and dirty as the others. There are a lot of balloons floating in the air around the castle, in which something dark floats. Julius squeaks in fright and trembles with fear. Alicia suggests that Julius wait for them if she is so scared. However, Julius immediately refuses. Her voice is trembling with fear, but she wants to go with the master. She should have brought a spare pair of underwear. Coming closer to the big castle, Alicia confidently and bravely fights with all the spirits flying around, while Julius looks at it with fears and Alec with interest. At this time, Tia addresses Alec, saying that this building used to belong to a local lord. Tia, with a smile on his face, is glad that his new comrades are so strong and cope with all obstacles so easily. He also says that he can't wait to go inside the castle with them. He asks Alec for permission to go with them. Tia says he knows a lot more, he will definitely be useful to them, and that for such delicious food, he will be ready to serve his master for eternity. Alec happily agrees to take it. Alec carefully opens the creaking door. Alicia and Julius fully open the doors, after which sunlight penetrates into the dark corridor. However, the hallway is still too dark, so Alicia uses the holy light. There is a lot of knight's armor in the corridor. One is different from the others. Julius, frightened, says that it seemed to her that one of the armor moved. Alicia says that they all look the same, and Alec assumes that they are guardians. The knights stand on both sides of the corridor and each has a sword in their hands. All the knights look simple enough, with thin swords, but some of them were different. Alec holds out his hands to them. He says that the knights apparently stopped functioning when there was no one left in the building, but he still feels the remnants of magical power. Alec thinks that the armor might be made of magic ore, but right now he doesn't feel magic in it. He notes for himself that this armor is very durable and resistant to magical attacks. Looking at Alec touching the magic armor, Alicia is worried as it could be dangerous, and Julius is clearly worried too. However, Alec assures them that they have nothing to worry about. Suddenly, something happens inside the armor. The next moment, the armor starts moving, pulls out its sword, and attacks Alec. Alicia deftly manages to block his attack with her sword, while the armor is swinging for the next blow. And at this moment, Alec cuts the armor into two using the Blade of Darkness. However, despite such a powerful attack, both halves of the armor reconnect, leaving no traces of injury. Alicia and Alec look at the intact armor with incomprehension. They realize that the armor most likely just absorbed the magic directed at it. Alec realizes that with the current level of magic, it will be impossible to destroy this armor, and they will have to use all their strength. However, he also understands that, in this case, the building itself may suffer. At this time, Julius screams and attacks the armor from behind, knocking his helmet off the top with one blow. She anxiously asks if everything is all right with the master while the armor is standing still. It seemed that he was no longer able to move without a helmet. After a second, a transparent slime with a dark center slowly begins to crawl out of the place where the helmet was located, stretching its body parts in different directions, wanting to get out of the armor. Alicia no longer looks hostile. She looks in surprise at how the slime gets out of the armor. She is surprised that it was the slime in the armor that turned out to be the guardian. Alec looks at it a little confused, not understanding how he did not feel the presence of mucus in the armor before. Suddenly, all three of them realize that there is a whole pile of slime around them. Alec, having assessed the situation, decides to use the seal to finish everything as soon as possible. He decides to use the shadow wave, as it is a mass destruction magic. However, before the spell can take effect, Alec suddenly jumps out of nowhere and resolutely flies towards the armor. He falls into the hole where the slime just came out. The armor shakes for a while, after which it stops and stands still for several seconds. After which, suddenly, Alec appears from under the armor, which clung to another slime and dragged it after him, forcibly pulling it out of the armor. Alec drags the slime and brings it to the master. He moves strangely, obviously trying to say something, but Alec doesn't understand anything about his movements. At this point, Tia intervenes. He explains Alec's words to the master and that he asks the master to sign a contract with the slime. Alicia sulks and chastises Alec for taking such a risk. Alec agrees with her. He says that Julius' boldness apparently inspired Alec, who was just comfortably sprawled out in Julius' arms at that time. Alec says with a smile that he doesn't mind signing a contract with slime at all. Besides, he can use the armor they used to live in and which they won't need now for materials or sell. Alicia warns her master with a shout, after which she quickly pulls her up and stands in front. The armor starts moving again at this time. She takes her sword and points it at Alicia and the others. At this time, she tells her comrades that this position is clearly not for a beginner, so she resolutely stands in front, blocking the others. While the armor is standing, pointing a giant sword at all three, a lot of spirits suddenly begin to fly around, having previously flown freely outside the building. Julius looks fearfully at all the suddenly appeared spirits, and Alec looks with horror at the living armor, which is now able to move even without mucus inside. At this time, Alicia hides the master and tries to protect him and the others with all her might. She repels the attacks of the armor, which is difficult for her, since the massive sword in the hands of the armor is clearly not comparable to her thin iron sword. He remembers that when he attacked the armor earlier with the Blade of Darkness, his attacks were consumed by something like flames. Suddenly, an idea comes to him. He turns to Alec and asks him to immediately gather all the slugs together. Tia gets scared and already turns towards the exit, standing on her hind legs and saying that they need to run. Julius is also scared, but she is doubtful, as Alicia was still fighting hard. Alicia continued to struggle with the living armor at this time. She was obviously tired after all this time. She can fend off attacks, but she realizes that an ordinary iron sword is not strong enough against her opponent's weapon. While Alicia is busy, spirits are sneaking up on her from all sides. She notices them too late, unable to dodge. Alec manages to help her. He uses the dark box to get rid of all the nearby spirits around. Alec tells Alicia that he will neutralize the spirits and she does not need to worry about them. She does not distract herself from the battle, but finds time to thank her master for his help. At one point, Alicia manages to stick her thin sword into a small space between pieces of armor. The sword had seeped into the left shoulder of the armor. Alicia pulls her sword back with one strong blow, separating her left arm from the armor. Julia, who still stayed with her comrades, is glad that Alicia managed to injure the living armor. Alec smartly uses the dark box to get rid of the severed arm. Alicia is happy, because with this strategy they will be able to quickly deal with the living armor. However, quite unexpectedly, huge streams of flame begin to actively ooze out of the armor in all directions. Alicia is trying to hide from him somehow. Alec shouts at her that she needs to stop, as it is better for them to retreat and recover in this situation. If the flames continue to ooze out of the armor, the entire mission may catch fire and collapse. Julius looks in horror at the burning beams, and Tia screams in fright that everything is on fire, pointing to the ceiling. A jet of flame moved towards Alicia, who was distracted for a moment, from which she did not have time to close herself. However, Alec manages to close it, which stretched out in front of her like a human shield. Parts of his body fall on the fire and extinguish it a little. After that, Alec reverts back to his original form, clearly tired and weak. Alicia is scared for him, saying that it was too dangerous for him since he has a water attribute. Hearing the words about water, Alec remembers something and an idea comes to him. He turns to Tia and orders him to tell the slugs to get ready. The worried and frightened slugs gathered together. Alec realizes that there are about 100 slugs there, and with that many they will definitely be able to cope with the fire. Alec decides to apply his plan. He turns to Alicia and shouts for her to back off. She does as she was told, after which Alec stretches out his hand and uses a water bomb, after which a huge stream of water rises from the floor right under the living armor and completely envelops them. The whole space around was filled with water. While the living armor was rapidly being surrounded by liquid, everyone looked at it in surprise without saying a word. Alec himself, who used a water bomb, was the most surprised of all. After some time, the water flow stopped. In its place, the armor remained standing, which fell to the carpet a moment later. On the carpet in turn, there was a huge dark wet spot from the water. Elijah comes closer to the no longer living armor and examines it. She notes that the water flow that appeared completely extinguished all the flames. Julius was also looking at the armor with curiosity. Alec was looking at his seal joyfully, but still a little excitedly, mentally rejoicing that his plan had worked perfectly. At this time, Alicia says that she would like to rid the armor of its limbs, just in case. Julius, in turn, slightly frightened, moves away from the armor. She excitedly asks to make sure that the armor will definitely not be able to stand up anymore. Then Alicia picks up both of the fallen arms of the armor and begins to quickly shake them in front of Julia's face, making terrible noises at the same time. Julius gets terribly scared and screams loudly in fear. She is very offended by Alicia again. Julius shouts loudly at his friend, again asking her to stop such jokes. However, Alicia responds by saying that it was just a joke. During all this conversation, both Alicia and Julius stood with their backs to the armor lying peacefully on the wet carpet. However, suddenly the armor stands up behind them. She staggers from side to side, as some of her limbs have already been taken away. Suddenly, a sound like a heart-rending scream is emitted from the inside of the armor. It sounded like a man was screaming. The next moment, Julius is already standing behind Elijah, scared. Elijah, on the contrary, boldly stands in front, ready for battle. She doesn't understand why this armor is talking and refuses to believe it. At this time, the armor continues to wobble in different directions, while the words of the man came from inside. He complained that his body couldn't move properly. Gathering his thoughts, Alec finally asks Branya if she can hear him. She angrily replies that she hears him perfectly. She also says that she sees absolutely nothing. Upon hearing this, Alec turns his gaze to a bunch of slugs behind him, which have surrounded the armor's head lying on the floor. He assumes that because of her absence, the armor cannot see. He picks up a helmet and puts it on his armor. After that, Branya happily says that she can finally see what is happening around her. She says she recognizes the Lord's estate in her surroundings. Seeing Alec in front of her, Branya says uncertainly that she did not expect to see a little girl in such a place at all. Alec is clearly not happy with Branya's words, so he decides to introduce himself to clarify the situation. He confidently asks Branya to tell him everything she knows about this place in detail. When she heard that the prince was standing in front of her, the armor is very surprised. She bows politely, asking the prince for forgiveness. She also politely introduces herself, saying that her name is Selena Therja Fraps. Alec thinks that Selena was most likely a knight under the old empire. After that, he asks her to tell him what happened on this island. Selena begins her story by saying that she used to be the commander of the 6th squadron of knights who came from the empire, and Tyrus was once attacked by only one person. It was a woman dressed all in black. This woman was easily able to get rid of Selena and all her subordinates. Memories of past events fly before her eyes. Alec realizes in his mind that the soldiers who are fighting alongside Alicia died at the hands of one person. Selena continues her story, saying that she somehow turned into a living armor, and the only thing she could do was continue to deal with all the intrusions. But one day her body stopped moving completely and she fell asleep. At this time, the demoness realizes with horror that Selena's soul is locked in the armor. She is worried about what they should do now. Alec is thinking at this time that the woman who single-handedly captured the tiara is definitely not human. Her thoughts are interrupted by Julius and Elijah standing behind him. They are holding parts of Selena's armor in their hands, addressing the master as if asking what they should do with them. He tells them to put all the limbs back in place, which they do. Selena moves her hand, thanking the girls, saying that it's much better this way. However, in the next second, her hands begin to move on their own, directing their punches towards the girls. She says in a panic that her body does not obey at all. Alicia asks her to stop, but she replies that she can't stop at all. Then Alec uses the Blade of Darkness, depriving Selena of all limbs. She is not angry and sincerely apologizes for what happened. Alec realizes that she was probably just ordered to attack all the living. Selena tries to justify herself to Alec, but he interrupts her, demanding that she sign a contract with him as soon as possible. She does not understand. Alec explains to her that this way she will become his follower. He suggests that then, perhaps, she will be able to free herself. Selena resolutely says that she swore to be loyal to the Empire and therefore to the prince, so she asks him to sign a contract with her. Alec reaches out and signs a contract, after which the magic holding Selena captive disappears, and she becomes a young girl with long dark hair again. Selena looks at herself in shock, not believing what is happening. She can't believe her body is back to normal. She moves her fingers and hands, looking at her limbs, which are back in place. After that, Selena joined hands with God. There was a happy smile on her face and small drops of tears appeared in her eyes. She thanked Alec loudly and sincerely for his help. Alicia looks at Selena holding her master's hands, while her face takes on an unpleasant expression. Alicia is in a hurry to tell Selena that she is behaving very rudely since she is just touching the prince, a member of the royal family. Selena then apologizes sheepishly for her behavior. Alec looks at it with a smile. Alec decides to get down to business. He asks Selena if she could show them the island. Selena immediately happily agrees to his request. However, immediately after that, she says, as if casually, that after so many years she does not even remember the name of the island. Julius and Alicia are not sure that they can trust her. She just laughs in response, not sharing their excitement. Alec tells her that it has been many decades since Tyrus became a completely abandoned island. However, instead of further explanations, he simply tells Selena that she will see everything for herself. After that, Selena goes to one of the doors, confidently leading the rest of the group. Upon entering one of the rooms, the travelers are presented with a terrible view. All the furniture is completely torn to shreds and broken. Every pane of glass in the window is broken. The room is a complete mess. Alec, Alicia, and Julius are watching this picture with horror. Alicia says that the woman in black, whom Selena mentioned earlier, is most likely to blame for everything. Alec agrees with her, looking at the dry, old human skeletons and individual bones scattered on the floor. Pieces and fragments of broken weapons are also scattered around them. Selena stands with her back to the rest. She holds in her hand a small shoe covered with dirt and dust. She's silent all the time, so Alec calls her off to find out what's wrong with her. Selena looks sadly at the shoe, carefully holding it in her hand. She says with sadness in her voice that when she sees all this, she is overtaken by thoughts that she has not been able to protect anyone. She says that the woman in black dealt with everyone indiscriminately, and with knights, and with women, and even with children. Selena says they all didn't deserve to die like that. She also remembers that when she was still in armor, she also dealt with many travelers. During the story, tears begin to accumulate in Selena's eyes. She pauses, not knowing what else she can say. Alec and the others silently look at her with pity in their eyes. Suddenly, Selena says that she should have died along with her friends many years ago. After listening to her, Alec smiles gently and tries to cheer her up. He tries to change the subject slightly, saying that they should be glad that they were able to find the administration building that has not yet been destroyed. He says that since there are no more fire spirits, he can clear the island of monsters. Alec agrees with him. Alicia looks around the old room and says that they have a lot of work to do before people can live there. Then Alec says that in that case, they will only use the proceeds from the store in Roblion for now. Alicia says they should go back. Alec agrees with her, and his worried gaze is directed at Selena. He calls Selena, who looks out the window with a saddened look. When she hears that she has been called, she turns to Alec. He says that people will not be able to live there yet, so he asks her to organize the current inhabitants for now. He says he would like Selena to become the protector of tiaras. These words amaze her. Selena asks again in surprise, and Alec confirms his words in response. He says that Selena will definitely have the responsibility to protect the inhabitants from the attack of demonic crows. Upon hearing this, Selena immediately assumes a serious expression with confidence, saying that they can rely on her for this and she will never let them down. Selena clenches her fist. She only thinks that this time she will definitely be able to protect the inhabitants of the island properly. She happily asks Alec where her new residents are. She addresses her citizens with a bright smile, saying that from today she has been appointed to the position of their defender. She also introduces herself and gives her name. However, Selena suddenly interrupts her rousing speech in front of her citizens as soon as she lowers her eyes and looks at her citizens. Below, under the terrace where Selena, Julius, Alicia, and Alec were standing in the common room, a giant crowd of mice mixed with slime had gathered on the floor. Selena stands in a stupor for a few moments, not understanding what is happening. She starts to feel dizzy and her body starts to shake, while the endless squeaking of mice and the sounds of slimes can be heard around her. After that, Selena screams and asks what kind of crowd of mice and slimes it is instead of its inhabitants. After that, she faints, which greatly scares Julius. Selena, having woken up from a faint, stood calmly among her citizens. She stood with a smile, reading the document in her hand, saying that in total there are about 1,000 mice and slugs. She says that this is the total number of all residents on the island. The demoness looks at all this with sincere curiosity. She reminds Alec that earlier, when the Cyclops joined him, his magic power doubled. She thinks about how much his master's magic power should increase now, given the fact that he has signed a contract with hundreds of mice and slugs. However, they are very weak creatures. The demoness sulks resentfully and displeased, saying that they have hardly added any magical power to the master, so she calls them completely useless. Moreover, he is even slightly offended, telling her that it is clearly not for her to talk about who is useless, and his newly minted followers may even be useful. When she hears this, she immediately gets angry and demands that he repeat his words. Alicia is distracting Alec from this conversation. Alicia is standing with a worried face, and a small slime is comfortably settled in her arms. She says worriedly that slugs need water to live. She also adds that mice also need water for life. Unfortunately, for Selena and her many new citizens, Tyrus Island is not rich at all. There are very few edible resources on the island. This is because the island is surrounded on all sides by a sea full of water that is not usable. There are also many lands on the island, but they are absolutely not intended for any kind of agriculture. Then Selena offers her solution to the problem. She points her finger at the sky, in which many demonic ravens are flying. However, Tia is clearly against this proposal. He shouts in fear, with tears in his eyes, that this should not be done, because he doesn't understand at all how mice should hunt giant bloodthirsty crows. Then Selena takes the lead. She confidently says with a smile on her face that they can leave this task to her. She sincerely strives to help them as the defender of the island of Arisa. However, surprisingly for her, Tia turns out to be against her idea, saying that nothing will work with a desperate face. He says that although she is strong, he doubts that she will be able to hunt alone enough to be able to feed all the rats. Selena desperately falls to her knees, crushed by the words of Tia, who did not appreciate her abilities as a defender of the island. Alec, standing nearby, looks thoughtfully at the sky, preoccupied with his own thoughts. He turns to Julius, who is standing next to Alicia. Alec turns to Julia, telling her that he would like her to make a lot of small crossbows for the mice. Upon hearing this, she covered her face with her hands in a slightly frightened manner, muttering something in embarrassment. Hearing these words, Julius suddenly changes his face. She understands that her master has given her such a difficult task because he is confident in her. Besides, she would finally be able to benefit her master. A smile appears on her face and she confidently agrees to work. She is going to transfer the order to the workshop and says that they will definitely fulfill the order. Julius is glad that he can finally be useful. Then Alec takes out a dark cube, allowing Julius to take any materials that might be useful. He also gets the feathers and beaks of previously defeated crows for her. Julius is happy to take all the necessary materials, while Selena is watching all this behind her. She realizes that Alec's plan is to provide the mice with all the necessary weapons so that they can get their own food. Then she offers her help in properly training the mice for hunting. Alec supports her train of thought while Tia, listening to their conversation, beeps tiredly, already imagining all the difficulties awaiting him. He asks fearfully if they really expect mice to fight demons. However, Selena, in response to his concern, tries to cheer him up by saying that they have nothing to worry about, so she will be with them and help them with training. Alec looks at it with a smile. He understands that with Selena's command skills and Cyclops' crossbows, they will definitely be fine. He also thinks again that when the number of his followers increases, his powers also grow in direct proportion. The more followers he has, the more magical power he has. After that, when the master's strength increases, his followers also become stronger. The demoness confidently confirms his train of thought. Alec thinks that now even mice will be able to hunt demonic ravens. He turns to Tia, saying that until the crossbows are ready, they will help them in order to get food. Tia only squeaks in response to this. He says that he understood everything, and in that case they can wait for the birth of offspring for now. Alec agrees with him. After that, he turns to Alec. He asks him to tell the slugs not to do anything risky yet either, while Alec and the others take care of everything. Alec, in response to this, joyfully jumps on the spot. Then Alec says that next they should think about the water source. Hearing this, Tia comes up with an idea. He says there is a lot of water underground. He himself stands in front of some kind of hatch on the ground. After hearing his words about water underground and looking at the hatch on the ground, he assumes that there are underground channels underground. Tia, on the other hand, looks at him with incomprehension. He says he doesn't know anything about any channels at all. Selena, looking at this, remembers something. She says that there used to be a capital on the island, which means there must surely be channels with drinking water. These words surprise Alicia, Alec, and Julius. Julius, with a surprised expression on his face, asks to make sure if this is true. Alec then explains to them that in the days of the old empire, such channels could well have been present. Alicia is also thinking about the reasoning of her comrades. Alec looks around and suddenly turns his attention to something. In the distance, he notices a small pillar against the wall sticking out of the ground. This pillar turns out to be a crane under which a small container is located. It looked old and covered in dirt and rust. Suddenly, a dark drop of unknown liquid appears from the end of a long dried tap. Immediately after the appearance of this small drop, a huge amount of liquid immediately begins to pour out of the tap with force. Despite the viscosity of the black liquid, it is in huge quantities and very fast. Selena gets very scared and stands behind Alec, fearfully asking what kind of liquid it is. Alec, looking at this, suddenly understands something. An agitated expression appears on his face. He does not want to believe in what is happening. He turns to Alicia to quickly deal with this situation. Alicia immediately understands what her master wants. She stretches her arms out, intending to use a spell on an unknown liquid. A second later, purified drops appear in place of the dark and viscous liquid, after which all the tap water becomes crystal clear. Alicia closes her eyes and folds her hands, finishing the spell. Selena looks at what happened with surprise. Alec comes closer to the source and examines it. He realizes that his thoughts turned out to be true. Alec was thinking that there was dark magic in magic, which was why it was so dark, viscous, and unsuitable for darkness. He turns to Tia and asks him and the other mice to taste the water. Tia agrees. He says they can drink water this way or use the leaves to drink. A few mice start drinking water with joy. After making sure the water was safe, he turned to the gentleman, saying that everything was in order and the water could be safely drunk. Alicia suggests that these may be leaves from a sacred tree. Selena also examines the piece of paper and says that it is quite possible. She says she heard that the Empire had a small supply of water with the leaves of the sacred tree. He says he needs to see the water source. Alec asks Tia to guide him through the sewers. He beeps as a sign of agreement. Alec goes there with Tia, Selena, and Alicia, while Julius has gone to make crossbows. They all go down the stairs leading to the sewer full of sewage water. Despite the fact that Tia leads the entire group through the sewers, he says he has never been to this place before. Alec notes that the room is getting too dark, so he decides to add some light. He reaches out his hand and decides to use the holy light. Alec expected to see a fairly weak light source, the same as when he first tried this spell. However, unexpectedly for him, the light from the spell turned out to be much stronger. The light was so strong that he even squeezed his eyes shut and tried to hide from the light. However, Selena, who was standing behind him, did not have time to close her eyes and look straight at the light. Selena stood behind him, her eyes wide open, completely motionless, and continued to stare at the bright light. That's because she's still considered undead, and it was the holy light that Alec used. Because of this, he almost banished Selena while Alicia was trying to hold her back, calling her master for help. Alec stopped using the holy light so that Selena could recover. As soon as everything got better, he breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that he did not expect at all that he would become so strong that he would even be able to expel the undead with the help of light. He understands that he should be more careful with his powers. Alicia looks worried. She quietly and confusedly notes that her master is already so good at holy magic, even better than her, despite the fact that he borrowed this skill from her. She sadly says that her master will not need her very soon. Alec, in response, tries to calm her down, saying that this is not the case at all and he will always need her. Selena, who has regained consciousness, hears their conversation. She decides to intervene in the conversation. With a bright smile, she says that her master has nothing to worry about at all, since in case of danger she will definitely protect him with her fire magic. After hearing about Selena's fire magic, Alec and Alicia have flashbacks in their heads. They recall how during the battle with Selena, imprisoned in armor, jets of fire burst out of her body and almost burned down the entire building. Selena, apparently not remembering what was happening, does not understand their reaction. After that, Alicia asks Selena to show her seal and she agrees. Selena, clearly proud of her seal, declares with burning eyes that her seal is bubbling blood. The Dana seal improves combat skills with fire magic, as well as strengthens closest allies. Upon hearing this, Alicia says that in this case, it is not surprising that they were so hot at the time. However, as soon as she said that, she immediately corrects herself, saying that it was just very warm. Alec decides to change the subject and points ahead, saying they should move on. The whole group continues to move forward as sewer water gushes into the canal to their left. The water in the canal flows at a very strong speed. At one point, she even spills out of the channel and touches Alec. He finally pays attention to the strong flow. Alec thinks about it and asks his comrades aloud where such a strong stream can come from. Alicia notes that she does not smell the sea from the water. She suggests that there may be another source of water in the ground. Tia comes closer to the water and looks into it, saying that this water always behaves like this and flows just at breakneck speed. Alec wonders where the water can flow from at such a high speed in both rain and sunny weather. This is an unusual room in the shape of a circle. The ceiling of this room is also rounded. The whole room is one large circular pool. Dark sewer water is actively bubbling in this dirty and strange pool. Alec assumes that this place is the source of all the water that flows so actively through the sewers. He notes that the source seems to be in the middle of this small pool. Elijah realizes that there, under the water, the sacred tree shines through. A small tree trunk with thin branches that have no foliage at all. Selena confirms that this sprout is definitely a sacred tree. But neither Selena nor Alicia understand what happened to him, and most importantly, why the tree is completely black. They both clearly look worried about what they're seeing. Suddenly, a lot of dark magic begins to ooze from the sacred tree through the water surrounding it. Tia gets scared, and Alec tries to warn his companions, while he himself tries to hide from the strong flow of magic. He approaches Selena and Alicia, and confidently says that he will be able to protect all three of them from dark magic. He also tells Elijah that they must purge the sacred tree of dark magic at all costs. Elijah immediately understands her master's order and immediately gets down to business. She stretches her arms out and focuses, intending to use the same spell she used earlier on the surface to purify the water. Suddenly, Alicia notices that something is going wrong. Despite her best efforts, she clearly sees that her spell is not working properly. She is surprised to tell her companions that she probably does not have enough strength. She realizes that the darkness seems to appear much faster than they clear it. Alec tells her that he will try to contain this darkness so that it will be easier for Alicia to purify the water. She tells her companions that the water has already cleared. Alec and Alicia are clearly surprised and scared at the same time, because they realize that the water couldn't have cleared so quickly, even though they put in so much effort. Suddenly, in front of them, an unknown figure appears among the clumps of dark magic. It's a ghost hanging in the air. Alec is very surprised, as he clearly did not expect to see a ghost in such a place. However, Selena, unlike him, is not at all afraid. On the contrary, she is inspired to fight. Alec realizes that hellfire is the ultimate magic, which is why he shouts to Selena that she should not use her magic, since with it Selene can destroy everything around. Instead, he turns to Alicia in order to get rid of the ghost. He asks her to attack the ghost's spirit core with her holy element. Alicia asks again, since this is probably the first time she has heard about the spiritual core. Alec explains to her that the spiritual core is a huge stone inside the ghost's body. Alicia understands his order and prepares to attack. Selena looks at all this without saying a word. Alec uses the barrier of darkness on the ghost in order to injure the ghost and prevent its dark magic from reaching them. Selena watches in fascination as Alec fights. She looks at how he confidently holds the barrier and also uses the cube to get rid of dark magic. After that, she turns her gaze to the ghost. His body was already severely deformed. Selene notices that most of the ghost's body has already crumbled, but despite this, the spiritual core is still nowhere to be seen. Alicia is silent. She closes her eyes and puts her hand to her forehead. Alicia is trying to concentrate, but her head is already starting to hurt from more exertion. Alicia analyzed the situation at this time and came up with something. Selene quickly picked up her sword. After that, she turns to Alicia and asks her to use her holy magic on Selene's sword. Alicia doesn't quite understand what Selene is talking about at first, but after a moment she understands and holds out her hand. After that, the massive selenium sword begins to glow with a bright light. She confidently takes it in both hands, standing in a fighting stance. After that, Selena confidently shifts the sword in her hands and immediately quickly heads towards the ghost in order to attack directly. Alec and Alicia open their eyes in surprise, looking after Selena. Coming closer, Selene has the opportunity to get a better look at the ghost's body. There, under his mantle and in the middle of the bones, a dim light is visible. It is the spiritual core. With one confident leap, Selena flies over the surface of the water and flies past the ghost, hitting him through with her blow, hitting right into the spiritual core. After that, the ghost's body disintegrates and begins to crumble. The remnants of his body disintegrate and each of the bottom forms many small spirits. Selena doesn't even turn around at this time. Confident of her victory, she stands with her back to the enemy, lowering her sword. She turns around, looking at her companions, and her eyes light up with joy. After that, Selena stands on the edge of the cliff and gets down on one knee. She carefully worships in front of her prince, as if reporting on her impeccable service. Alec looks at Selena in fascination, his mouth open and his eyes wide, which shone and shone. Alicia, who was standing behind him at that moment, had a strange expression on her face, clearly not a kind of admiration. However, at one moment the edge of the cliff on which Selene stood with one foot breaks under her heel, which is why the next second Selene falls uncontrollably down. She doesn't even have time to scream as she already falls into the water. Alicia and Alec just stand and stare at the small water bomb that formed after Selena fell into the water. They look at the water a little anxiously, waiting for their friend to surface. For a while, a lot of bubbles appear on the surface, after which selenium finally successfully floats up. With the help of a small, simple ladder on the wall of the pool, she climbs to her companions. Alicia leans over to her and says that the way Selena defeated the ghost was very cool. Alec supports her, saying that this is to be expected from the commander of the Knight's Order. Selena's mood immediately lifts. She gets to her feet and scratches the back of her head in embarrassment. She is a little embarrassed to refuse compliments, saying that she did everything thanks to their help. After that, Alicia decides to take a look at the tree, which is now clearly visible since it was no longer covered by a continuous stream of dark water. She looks at him and says that the tree seems to have died along with the ghost. The tree looks very weak, its trunk and tonic. The bare branches are completely blackened. Alec notes that it probably just wilted. He turns to Alicia with a request. He asks her, just in case, to check the withered sacred tree with the help of holy magic. Alicia uses holy magic according to the master's orders. Thanks to the holy magic used by Alicia, the tree came to life again. It has regained its natural color, all the blackness has completely disappeared. The branches of the tree have become stronger and healthier. He notes that the animated sacred tree looks incredibly beautiful. Alec looks at the sacred tree and its radiance with the same happy, childish smile. He says that this radiance helped to revive the sacred tree. Small droplets of purified water are flying around, actively bubbling from the source. Tia stretches out her arms and takes a few drops in her hands. He tastes the water and happily informs that this water is very tasty. Alec agrees with him. He also says that this water can be safely drunk, and even a weak recovery potion can be created from it. Selena holds out her hands, which are also covered with a lot of water droplets. She is very emotionally excited about how many different properties this water has. Tia is also happy, already celebrating their significant success. Alec happily says that if they clean the underground pipes, then there will be no more water problems in the city. At this moment, Alicia says that Alec, who is comfortably positioned in her arms, can help them with this. Alec turns to Tia, since it was thanks to him that they managed to sort out all the problems so quickly. Tia, in turn, embarrassingly refuses compliments. After that, Alec casts a sidelong glance at the demoness in his mind. She already clearly knows why Alec is looking at him like that, so she pouted and turned away. She asks why he's looking at her like that, but he says it's nothing. However, she can't stand it and very undesirable, but still grudgingly admits that she was wrong and that slime and mice are also very useful followers. Selena carefully guided the mice, teaching them how to use crossbows, how to aim and shoot. It's time for the hunt. The mice hid in one of the buildings, pulling the tips of crossbows out of the windows. A lot of mice aim at one prey, after which they measure in anticipation of the command. Their target is a crow sitting quietly on the ground, suspecting nothing. Suddenly, Selena loudly gives the command to open fire, after which many arrows fly into one crow at once, completely destroying the target. Tia, holding a crossbow in her hand, happily celebrates the fact that he was able to hit the target with an arrow. Selena is also clearly happy for her students and their progress. However, the hunt does not end with one defeated target. In the end, Selena and Tia bring their master a whole mountain of dead crows. Selena proudly tells His Highness that they have successfully destroyed all the demonic ravens on the island. Alec looks in surprise at a whole mountain of demonic crow carcasses, while Alicia and Julius, who has returned to their team, look at it with a smile and joy. Tia joyfully shouts that they have coped and he has finally been able to avenge all his fallen comrades. Alicia smiles, noting how fierce Tia is. Alec also smiles, thinking that his behavior was probably influenced by Selena's seal. Julius leans over to Tia and says that this is only a prototype, but if he is completely satisfied with it, then Tia will be able to continue using it. She also says that with the new materials, they will be able to equip all the mice with such crossbows. Alec, with a smile on his face, thanks Julia for the work done, saying that almost everything is ready. Julius enthusiastically says that in this case, they will continue to work hard in the workshop. Alicia also adds that thanks to the tree in the canals, we have a large supply of holy water. Selena also adds that valuable materials can be sold from all demonic ravens. After listening to them all, Alec thinks about it and says that for now, that's enough for them. He says that some of the work has already been done since they got rid of the dangerous demons on the island. He also adds that they obviously won't last long on crows and holy water alone. Then he proposes to organize the fishing industry. Selena says that it will be difficult for mice, but the idea is clearly not a bad one. After that, Selena offers her idea, namely a magic ore. Then Alec asks her to tell him about this magical ore in more detail. Then Selena explains that her armor is made of mithril. She also says that there are caves under the island connecting it to the continent. Selena suggests setting up a mine there, which may turn out to be quite good, given the amount of resources, and use it to protect the guards from the Lord's palace. She thinks she can control them because she used to be their commander after all. Alec thinks about her words. He says that 1,000 years ago, when the core was intact, they could move forever. Then Alicia says that they can use them not only for defense, but also to destroy the demons on the continent. Julius then confidently says that they can safely leave the definition of magic ore to her. After that, they are going on another trip. Selene shows his comrades how to get down to the mines. They all go down a long spiral staircase leading down. Eventually, they come to the door. However, when they take a closer look at it, they discover something. Namely, that there is a lock on the door and it is locked. Selene notes that the castle was clearly made of orichalcum. After that, after a little reflection, she suggests using her sword to break the lock. However, Alec immediately dissuades her from this idea, saying that in this case she will definitely destroy everything around with her unimaginable destructive power. Alec leans over to the lock and looks closer at it. He says it's not an ordinary castle. Alicia, having also examined the castle, says that most likely only at least 10 skilled magicians will be able to open it. Hearing these words, Julius gets scared. She also gets upset, because it seems to her that this means that they simply will not be able to go further. However, Alec calmly orders the door to open at this moment, and it obeys. Julius, Alicia, and Selena just stand there and stare at him in silence. After that, a shocked expression appears on the faces of each of them. Alec, holding the lock in his hand, hurries to explain that he just used some dark magic on the lock. He also says he didn't think he would open up so easily. Selena praises him for his excellent work. Alicia says that her master is amazing, and Julius says that he will serve him forever. The demoness, who hears all these praises, clearly does not like it, while Alec embarrassedly asks his comrades to stop showering him with compliments, as they embarrass him. The demoness angrily screams that she can do it too, but no one hears her except Alec, who would like her to just be quiet and not spoil the moment. At this time, Selena suggests that her team move on, but suddenly she is stopped by new doors, which she apparently sees for the first time. She desperately tries to open the door, not understanding why it won't open. Alicia then asks Julius to help Selena. They try to open the door together while Alec asks Selena what's the matter. She explains that she does not remember that there were doors in this place. Alec says that the doors must have appeared there after Selena was imprisoned in the armor. He suggests that they could have been used to protect themselves from the woman in black that Selena mentioned. Then she thinks about the words. Selena argues that apparently when the woman attacked the island, all the inhabitants fled to the continent through caves, and in order to break away from their pursuers, they locked the doors. Alicia at this time says that with the powers of the Orc and Cyclops, they will easily open this door. Julius, who is clearly very tired, barely agrees with her. Selena, with tears in her eyes, says that in order to save people from the continent, they put up such a solid door, so she also wants to try her best. She also makes every effort, after which the door finally opens. A heavy door creaks open and a little light finally spills into a large, dark hall. However, no one exactly expected to see what was there. A dark room appeared in front of them, the floor of which was filled with human skeletons. Selena looked with horror at the many old human bones, seeing in them her previous inhabitants, whom she could not protect. There is a small badge among all the bones and old clothes. It was old, pieces had broken off in some places, and it was covered in dirt and blood. Selena quickly picks it up, recognizing it as the ruler's emblem. While examining the bones and skeletons, Julius realizes with horror that all these bodies belong to refugees from the island. Alicia examines their skeletons and concludes that many of the refugees were killed by arrows and weapons. Looking closely, among the pile of remains of various people lying on the floor almost close to each other, there were also small, children's skeletons, which also had traces of a weapon attack. Alec realizes with horror that the door was not made to protect people, but in order to keep someone, suddenly someone shouts at Alec. He turns around and sees that the guards appear behind them, who pointed their weapons at them and completely blocked the passage back to the exit. Alec manages to react quickly and uses a barrier of darkness, after which they are covered by a barrier of darkness. Selena tries to somehow stop the guards from attacking, shouting orders to them, and saying that she is the commander-in-chief of the squad. However, they do not listen to her at all and continue to attack. One of them manages to stab Selena in the back with a sword, after which she stops all attempts to reason with the guards and stop them. Selena comes closer to the others. They look worried and say that the guards apparently just started attacking all the people without orders. Alec doesn't quite understand what exactly she means by orders. She also turns her attention to another door and suddenly calls her master to look at it. On the other side of the hall, opposite from where they came from, there was another door, which had the same lock that Alec had easily opened before. After that, Alec turns to Selena. He asks her if she notices any changes in the behavior or appearance of the guards. Selena looks at the guards and evaluates them carefully. Suddenly, she finally notices and says that the color of their core has changed. Selena said that the color of the core has changed from red to purple. Alec immediately understands what this means, since purple is the color of dark magic. Alicia then turns to Alec and suggests that he make a leap to get out of this difficult situation in which they are completely surrounded. However, Alec refuses, saying that there is too little space and he will not see the exact coordinates. Selena then hurries to tell him that the mine should be further away. After running through a small corridor, they find themselves in a huge cave. It was divided into several levels and went down. There were several passageways in different directions on each of the levels. Alicia and Alec look at it with surprise and Julius with admiration. Selena says that this place is the central mines of Tyrus. However, during their little conversation, the guards are already approaching them, who have not stopped chasing them all this time. Alec turns to Selena and asks her to protect them. Selena immediately agrees and picks up her own. She concentrates, then uses her fire power, which causes a strong fire stream. Elijah steps back slightly, trying to protect himself from the strong streams of fire, gets to work, and using his seal, he summons many small black spheres floating in the air. He uses a jump on these spheres, so that they instantly move almost directly to the spiritual cores of the Guardians. And while they are blinded and confused, Alec is going to quickly get rid of the dark magic in their cores with the help of these spheres. Alec immediately uses absorption on each of the guards. After the dark magic was sucked out, the Guardians return to their original position. Selena notices that the color of their core has become the same as before. Alicia and Julius look at the guards with concern, and Selena in turn is in no hurry to relax, keeping a tense expression on her face. They are awaiting further action by the guards. They stand motionless, pointing their heads up and do not even pick up the owl's weapon, completely motionless. Seeing that the guards are not moving in any way, Selena decides that they may have returned to normal, therefore they cannot move without orders. She stands in front of them and proudly declares that she is the commander of the Order of Knights. She also informs them that their former lord has died, and that they are now officially under the command of the sixth prince of the empire, Alec. After these words, the sound of metal hitting the floor was heard. Those guards who were still armed, they arbitrarily threw out their weapons, obeying the orders of the commander of the Order of Knights. Alicia notes that it has finally become very quiet around, and Julius wearily says that she thought she would definitely die. At this time, Alec draws attention to one of the objects in the cave, namely, one of the stones. Not only does it look different from the others, but Alec also notices that the stone exudes the most real magical power. Immediately after he notices this, the stone begins to move, while many other stones from the surroundings begin to rise behind it. Eventually, when they come together, they form a golem. However, Alec remembers that they are not on the territory of the island at all. Elijah adds that they are currently in the territory of the Demon Kingdom. And Selena, who does not hide her surprise that there is something like this in the Tierra. Julius, in turn, as always, is terribly scared, and in front of the sight of a huge monster, he can only squeak softly and helplessly. The golem, in turn, chooses its first victim. In the end, he chooses Julia, since she was standing closest to him, and therefore he quickly stretches out his arms to her. However, it is the guards who managed to come to her aid, who tried to attack them a few minutes ago. Two of the guards stop the golem's hand by crossing swords and holding it down. Julius turns around in surprise and looks at the guards, who are trying with all their might to hold the golem. After these words, she decides not to waste time and help her soldiers. She gets into a fighting stance and, picking up a sword, uses the fiery flame again. She decides to strike her first blow at the golem's head, so there was a large hole in it, from which the light of the spiritual core was clearly visible. Selena strikes right at the core with all her might. However, nothing happens. She says the golem's core is very strong. After that, she notifies all her comrades that the core is precisely the ore in the golem's head. At this time, the golem is swinging his arm, scattering the guards around like small toys until they have the opportunity to resist his power. Selena is afraid for her subjects, who protect them at the cost of their lives. However, they point their weapons at the golem again, not wanting to step back. One of the fallen guards, lying at Alec's feet, raises his hand with difficulty and points with his finger at the passage in the wall. Julia says that they need to escape from there, while Alicia turns to her master and says that they need to retreat immediately. However, Alec clearly does not want to leave the guards behind. He thinks about something and then makes a decision. He bends down and kneels in front of the fallen guardian and asks if he and his companions would like to become his followers. Upon hearing this, the guardian listens to him attentively. At that time, while the remaining guards continue to fight the golem, at least 4 of the same golems manage to join him. They continue to get rid of the guards by punching them into the floor. However, at one point something happens. The golem does not have time to understand what happened, as suddenly the entire left arm was completely severed in just an instant. Looking ahead, he sees a new batch of guards in front of him. However, they are clearly different from their previous comrades. Their armor and weapons remained the same, but they were now surrounded by an ominous, unknown aura. After that, the guards continued their attack again, but this time each of their blows had destructive power, completely destroying the body parts of the golems in just moments. Seeing how her subordinates bravely fight to protect their commander and master, Selena decides to help them and join them. She picks up her sword again, telling her subordinates that they are doing a great job and she will join them. Alicia also decides to help in the battle, also boldly and quickly attacking golems, along with Selena and the guards. While some were working on the battlefield, several other guards took it upon themselves to protect Alec and Julius, standing behind the others. The guards stood in front of them, covering them with one hand. After a sufficient amount of time, the battle finally ended, clearly on the side of Mr. Alec's team. After a while, all four of them stood and looked at what was left after the battle. Only Selena was smiling brightly, clearly pleased with the battle. In front of them was a giant pile of stones left over from the collapsed bodies of golems. The battle had clearly brought real chaos to this room. All the guards who remained after the battle stood next to each other and all together, almost synchronously, got down on one knee and lowered their heads in front of their master. Alec feels awkward about it. He starts waving his arms and asks the guards to get up from their knees. However, in response, he hears only the words of one of the guards that they are all sorry. The guards' faces are not visible, but you could still see tears of regret pouring profusely from under their helmets. They sincerely apologize to their dear lord. They all lower their heads and try to wipe away their tears while some of them try to calm their comrades down. Julius, Alicia, and Selena look at it in silence. However, Selena cannot help but share the sorrows of her subordinates. There is sadness on her face, as if she too is about to cry. She says with a trembling voice that she doesn't understand anything. She says that in the end she was never able to protect the people she loved. After that, he turns to Mr. Alec. She asks his permission for her to properly bury the inhabitants of the island. Alec gives his consent. Upon hearing this, the knights are encouraged. Tears begin to flow profusely from their eyes again, but not from sadness but from joy. They say with sincere gratitude that they sincerely thank their master for such a mercy. Selena says that golems cannot be turned into servants. Alec thinks it's pretty sad since they could come in handy. He takes one of the cores in his hand and decides to try it. Alex was sitting on Galem's left shoulder, with his hand on his stone head. Alex, with a smile and enthusiasm in his eyes, said that the stone Galem had agreed to serve the prince after all. The three young girls were happy to talk, which was to be expected from their master. After that, the guards began to serve the young prince, and he decided to call them the Steel Legion, and the guy gave each a name. But unfortunately, they don't remember anything about when they were given the order to end the lives of all the living. However, with the Steel Legion, the island will definitely be safe. The young prince, raising his paley up, instructed his guards to protect the mines and help in the extraction of magical ore. A dark-haired girl with a very sweet smile and with great delight in her eyes, seeing a huge mountain with precious stones, said that it was very incredible. They discovered 4 types of magic ore. Mithril contains magic and is stronger than iron. Orichalcum is a universal material best suited for creating weapons. Adamantite is a very durable ore containing a huge amount of magical energy. Hihirakin is very similar to adamantite. In the cave, a young girl informed Alex that there were simply huge deposits of mithril here, and if they dug all day, there would be enough material to create a knife. The prince was surprised that there was only enough for a knife, and said that there was work for weeks ahead just to cover the cost of food. The girl turned thoughtfully to the prince, saying that there was one option: she could call her friends from all over the country, explaining that if the number of workers increased, then things would go faster. The prince approved of this option. Soon the guards came, saying that they would help. They were thanked and they got to work. The prince stood with sparks in his eyes and smiled tenderly. The work was in full swing. Everyone was busy, from small animals to huge stone creatures. The young prince said with a smile that there were noticeably more people, and that he had previously traveled only with Alicia, while he recalled how the two of them rode on a magic horse. The blonde girl, tapping her shoes on the ground, called out to Mr. Alex, putting her hand to her forehead. Smiling, the young prince asked if she remembered the old days. The girl replied, smiling, that it was so. Alex was very interested in how Lena was doing there, and maybe it was also difficult for them to get along with the others. He even wondered if he should visit her sometime. He further said that everything was fine. The blonde girl, with a smile and visible kindness in her eyes, thanked everyone for their work, and for such work she decided to offer them something. A sweet girl with slightly disheveled pigtails asked if they could really take it, and then thanked them. Carrying a bag of money, the girl said with a smile on her face that with this she would be able to buy new clothes for children. The young prince, smiling and slightly closing his eyes, said that he had also brought some supplies for the monastery, and added that they should definitely divide them all, while behind him stood a cart filled with a large number of boxes. The girl with long pigtails asked with slight incredulity and shyness if they could really take everything. Few people will want to eat food cooked by a person with the seal of darkness. Alec said without any emotion that the capital had not changed at all. Only the best materials are used in the city temple, and you won't even find a speck in them. In an ordinary building, everything has been dilapidated for a long time and needs good repair. A young man with a sweet smile and kindness in his eyes said that he would help them. A little girl with slightly frayed pigtails and a sweet smile asked if it was true, and then thanked him for it. Alex turned to the little girl's outstretched hand with a surprised look when he was called. She said that people had recently come to the temple and asked about him, and added her assumption that they were looking for him. The blonde beauty, with a slight fright and caution, asked if these were people who were ending other people's lives from the church again. Alex, slightly squinting, said in a confident voice that he didn't think so. Alex only managed to apologize to Lena, but he was interrupted by a girl with slightly battered pigtails, telling him not to worry, because she would tell everyone that she hadn't seen him for a long time. A young girl with slightly disheveled pigtails said in a frightened voice that he should be careful. Alex smiled slightly and kindly at the girl while closing his eyes. The young prince was thinking that he should warn Lord Labrian and also tell all the Cyclopes that he was being hunted by people who were ending other people's lives from the church. There was a loud and strong jump. He thought he should go in from the back entrance. The dark-haired girl, frightened and with slightly broken tears in her eyes, said that Mr. Alec was in the workshop. The blonde girl asked in surprise if the church had reached here. Alex, with an angry look and a slight fright, shouted that this could not be. They entered the room and saw a girl who was talking to a man. Alex, in a shocked state and a little scared, wondered if it was Iris and what she was doing here. Alex stared blankly at the stranger and abruptly remembered that she was in the Adventurers Guild, trying to figure out if he was thinking right, and Alex said that she looked very much like Iris. The prince wondered who she was. Alex continued his thoughts about why she decided to come to him. Suddenly, a stranger who looked like Iris said that she had heard that he was an experienced craftsman, while asking to create a sword from this, handing the horn to the man. The man exclaimed in amazement that it was the horn of a black dragon, while staring intently at the object. The blonde girl wondered if she was really so strong that she could defeat the black dragon. The young prince said that he could not believe that she was capable of defeating demons. Alex further concluded that this was secrecy. The blonde girl looked at Alex in surprise and, calling out to him, asked where he was in such a hurry. Alex, in complete fright and misunderstanding, made the assumption that this was a stranger, perhaps his acquaintance. A stranger who, in Alex's opinion, looks like Iris, handed a bag of coins to the man and at the same time said that this was payment. This brought the man into complete shock and misunderstanding. The man exclaimed and said that usually a sword is worth no more than 1 gold. The stranger replied to him that there were 100 gold coins here and many people had told her about him, so she asked him to create a better sword and make it faster, for the sake of her plan. Alex wondered what the plan was and suggested that she probably wanted to end the life of a very powerful demon. The man, because of his shock, said that it was too much. The dark-haired girl attracted attention and, smiling sweetly, said that she was the main blacksmith, Julius, and would try to finish her work as soon as possible, adding that it would take about an hour. When the stranger pushed the bag of money, the dark-haired girl just wanted to address the stranger, as she interrupted her and asked permission to ask a question. Next, the stranger asked if their master, His Highness Alec, was here or not. A stranger with a straight face was looking at the shocked face of a dark-haired girl who also expressed incomprehension. The dark-haired girl replied that the gentleman had left for the capital a few days ago. The stranger only replied that she understood. The blonde stranger said that there are many people in the city praising him and saying that he saved the city and without his help, this city would have been destroyed. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl looked at the stranger with incomprehension. The stranger, continuing her long monologue, added, asking if this damned prince really saved this city. Meanwhile, behind her in the doorway stood a young prince with a blonde girl. A blonde-haired girl with a face full of anger began to talk, slightly shouting, about what kind of a damn prince. Meanwhile, Alex stood unperturbed and with a smile on his face said that she really had such a bad opinion of me. The dark-haired girl standing in front of the stranger was slightly embarrassed and held her hand behind her head, scratching her head. Meanwhile, the blonde stranger apologized and said that she shouldn't have spoken so much about the royal. The The stranger continued her monologue, telling them to hand over the money to His Highness Alec as an apology. The dark-haired girl, slightly shyly, turned to the stranger to find out her name. The stranger, without any emotion, asked the dark-haired woman why she needed her name. The dark-haired girl began to justify her survey and said that she just gave away such a large amount, so she just wants to know her name. Then the stranger replied that her name was Lily and she was actually born in a city near the western border, adding that she was the daughter of a merchant. Meanwhile, Alec stood in complete shock and incomprehension. The young prince realized that she was definitely lying, and in fact she was the daughter of the House of Illyria, namely the daughter of the head of the family, who is a very modest and talented girl, Iris. After that, Alex continues his monologue, saying that he decided his life after rebirth, and he asked about what really, and she also wants to change her fate. Alex was tormented by the question of why she hunted demons and that he didn't know so much about her. The blonde girl screamed, somewhat startled, calling Alec. She was asked about what happened. Alicia was very angry and screamed a lot, saying that all sorts of dirty rumors were still being spread about the prince, adding that it was all untrue. The young prince was a little taken aback by what he said. The dark-haired girl turned to the young prince and asked if he really knew this girl, and at the same time looking at the young prince with a little fear and attentively. The young prince smiled broadly and said that this was not the case at all, and that he had only seen her once in the guild. Alex scratched his temple thoughtfully and said that she also used an assumed name, saying that her name was Lily. He said she probably didn't want anyone to recognize her. The young guy thought it was better for her not to know about it. Alex looked at the Pegasi and thought that despite all the rumors, he did not expect her to worry about him, and even now. After a while, two people flew away on Pegasus, and Alex thought that he hoped that she would succeed in her journey. The man called out to Julia and said with interest that she seemed to be busy. The dark-haired girl looked at the man worriedly and, remembering this, shouted that it was so and she had to run. The dark-haired girl hurried off abruptly. The blonde girl and the young prince looked at her in surprise. Alicia said she seemed to be very busy. The man stood next to Alicia and Alex, saying that their store had earned a good reputation, so the number of orders increased. The dark-haired girl sat down at her desk. She looked at them and, holding a ladle in her hands, said that it would take a long time to melt the mithril, and that with magic the process would go much faster. The young prince thoughtfully took hold of his chin and said that it should work with the magic ore. The young prince approached the dark-haired girl and asked if she wanted to learn magic. Julius looked at Alex in surprise and enthusiasm and asked what he was talking about. Alex said he could teach her magic, and Julius asked if it was true. The dark-haired girl very happily and enthusiastically asked him to teach her magic. The other workers gestured their approval at her and smilingly told her to leave all the work to them. After some time, they came to the training ground where there were many targets. Alex came forward and said that chain darkness is the magic of darkness and lightning, and that with its seal, learning this spell shouldn't be a problem. The dark-haired girl put her hands forward with great excitement, and the young prince helped her by placing them correctly. Alex told her to focus on the mana around her and imagine it gathering in her hands. The dark-haired girl said she understood her. Julius tried to learn magic, raising one hand up and bending the other at chest level, pulling back a little, then putting both hands forward. The girl tried very hard, but unfortunately nothing came of it. The dark-haired girl nervously and frustratedly shouted that she was not succeeding and apologized to Mr. Alec for not feeling anything. Alicia supported Julius with a smile, saying that she would succeed and that she was a cutie. The dark-haired girl shouted with a slight anger that Alicia should stop and that she would have liked an axe more than magic. Alex, with a smile on his face, tried to calm the girl down, telling her not to worry, as she just needed practice. The blonde girl asked Julia to concentrate, but her friend said that she would definitely succeed. Julius nervously shouted at them to stop bullying her. Alex was smiling, because he noticed that Julia had a small magical glow between her outstretched arms, which she did not even notice, because she was shouting at Selena not to laugh at her at least. A strong vortex suddenly formed from the small magical glow. Alex, seeing this, said that probably just in case, he would install protection, namely a barrier of darkness. The guy began to explain that lightning magic is very powerful when using a minimum of mana, adding that it is necessary to imagine that lightning struck the target. But first, the girl must feel the mana in her hands. The girl realized this and began to do what the prince said. A wooden target appeared in front of the dark-haired girl. Julius was surprised that she had succeeded. Alex enthusiastically, and with a smile, said that with training she would be able to do other things. Alex added, saying that now they can move on to practice, and that she should try to channel her magic into the magic ore. Julius smiled sweetly and agreed with the young prince. A dark-haired girl was sitting in front of a stove that melts magic ore. Julia was able to speed up this process and was surprised and delighted to be shouted that it was fast. Alex, with a smile on his face, told the dark-haired girl that everything is much easier with magic. Julia had joy on her face because she finally got something, and she said that now she could pour it into the mold and they would receive a mithril ingot. Two girls, holding the resulting ingot in their hands, said that they were seeing such pure mithril for the first time and that it was amazing. Julius was glad to hear this from the girls and stood with sparkles in her eyes and with a slight pride in herself. The dark-haired girl happily shouted to the guys that it was possible to create even more ingots than now. Alex was very happy for the young dark-haired girl. Everyone got to work, and gradually there were more and more ingots. After a while, there was a huge pyramid of ingots on the table. Julius was lying on the floor exhausted. Alex anxiously asked the girl if everything was all right with the girl. Julius replied to him that she thought she was too carried away. Next, Alex told Julia to try to do it further, while holding out a glass of water. The prince, with a smile on his face, told her to sing a little. The dark-haired girl started drinking without any suspicion, saying that it was just water. Unexpectedly for Julia, the glass was filled again, to which she said in surprise that the cup was full again. Alex began to explain to the dark-haired girl that this artifact is called the Endless Spring, and if you pour magic into it, the cup will fill with water again. Next, the prince continued his monologue, saying that the method of creation is very simple. The magic ore must be filled with magic, while imagining the shape of a cup, which creates water, and the ore will retain the properties of the embedded spell. The dark-haired girl, hearing what the young prince said, began to think about everything and enthusiastically said that not only water could be used, but also the magic of movement could be put there. The blonde girl, lightly clapping her hands, happily said that it was a brilliant idea. The other girl said with a smile that he, the gentleman, would then be able to teleport to the store at any moment. Alex also noted that he had also thought about it. However, Alex went on to say with regret and sadness on his face that the amount of mithril they have is limited, and the capacity of the object is also very limited, and that mithril will not withstand such magic. Since the capacity of the cup is 100, and 80 is needed to create water, and 26,570 is used for jumping. But after a while, Alex enthusiastically said that the idea was really not a bad one, and then continued that Julia should train first, and when she was already confident in her abilities, she would be able to create cups. Julius happily replied that she would try her best. Alex said that even just the spell creating water can take about 10 minutes to fix it with an artifact, and told Julius to take her time and calmly pour in magic. However, the girls said that it could take more than an hour to create such an artifact, and Alicia added that Mr. Alec was simply incredible. The dark-haired girl, with a little excitement, frantically started her work. She started looking for information in various books. After a while, Julius enthusiastically shouted to Mr. Alec that she was able to do it. After a while, a sweet girl with a smile and sparkles in her eyes stood, while holding a lighter in her eyes, and she said that this artifact could forever spew flames, to which Julius was clearly surprised and shocked. The blonde girl with a slight smile told the gentleman that she had also tried, and that this artifact could keep the food always fresh, while holding a suitcase with fruits in her hands. Julius was slightly upset and did not understand how it happened. Alex, with a smile on his face and slightly narrowed eyes, tried to calm the girl down, saying that they were great fellows and that they had worked very hard. Suddenly, a dark-haired girl called out to Alec, telling him to look at her too. Julius showed a huge network, to which Alex asked what it was. The dark-haired girl said that these were nets soaked in lightning magic. The blonde girl said that it would be difficult for people to use these nets, and if they were taken off, golems could fish. Alex enthusiastically agreed and said that magic does not work on golems. Alicia thoughtfully asked about the fact that a harpoon could be better suited if thrown into a school of fish. The effect would be the same, adding that it could be easier, and golems can use ordinary nets. The dark-haired girl was shouting in frustration that she thought it was a good idea. Alex tried to calm her down, saying that her idea was also good and offered to try out her networks. Julius thanked the gentleman with tears in his eyes. Alex added that with her magic, they had plenty of mithril. The dark-haired girl enthusiastically and nervously called out to Mr. Alec and said that she would continue to train and become the best blacksmith. The dark-haired girl also added that she would create an artifact that everyone else would envy. The two girls agreed with Julius, and Alex said he would look forward to the results. The sweet girl turned to Alex, telling him to give all his money, to which the prince said that she did not need it. The girl, with a slight indignation, told him to give her at least a little, because he had as much as 100 gold pieces and promised to return everything to him to the last penny. Alex was thinking that he had such amazing followers and that he was really very happy. A sweet girl called out to the young prince and shouted at him not to ignore her and listen to the girl. A blonde girl sits on the roof of a tall building, and her raincoat develops slightly in the wind. She carefully examines the beauty of the neighborhood of the town. Suddenly, someone starts moving between the buildings of the town and quickly moves to Alex, who was on the roof of the building. It turned out to be a brunette who had a sword in her hand. The girl screamed very loudly and furiously to burn her all-consuming flame, namely the flaming blade. Fiery blades flew at Alex, which he looked at with fear in his eyes, and he fleetingly summoned a trap of darkness. The fiery sharp blades that were flying straight at him very quickly suddenly froze in the air. The young prince enclosed them in magical spheres, which were entwined with chains, and held these fiery blades. The girl was very shocked and did not understand how he did it. She bulged her eyes and asked if he had blocked her flaming blade. Alex, looking scared and tense at the same time, said that this was exactly the case. The girl grinned ominously and thrust her sword forward, saying that he surprised her. The grin stretched even wider on her lips and loud noises rang out, and the residents looked at them with interest and surprise. The girl screamed loudly and called the inferno. A huge whirlwind was created, and the sky over the city was covered with pitch darkness. The girl stared at the sky in a daze, as did the residents of the city. The sky was not just dark but black. A magical dome appeared above the island, which prevented the destructive raging vortex from passing through. The young prince raised his hand, and with an imperturbable, menacing look, enclosed the vortex in a magic ball that was wrapped in chains. The magic ball hovered over the island while a whirlwind raged in it. The young prince smiled mockingly and said that he was certainly glad that her training was progressing well, but he hoped that she did not want to demolish the entire island. The girl started apologizing to him in embarrassment. The girl looked at the sky in surprise, saying that she was surprised that he was able to block even such a strong spell. Alex turned around and looked up, saying that the magic of darkness is strong against all elements except the saint. The young prince called out to a blonde girl who was sitting on top of a tall building. She noticed him by looking in his direction and became a little wary. Alex pointed his finger at the magic ball that held the raging vortex and told her to try shooting it with sacred light. She said she understood him and held out her hand. Suddenly, the magic ball cracked into small pieces and the chains split. The whirlwind was released from imprisonment. The girls were very scared and wary of what was happening. The young prince looked up no less scared and tense, while small pieces of the magic ball and chains flew in different directions. A huge flame hung over the island. The girl was very shocked and asked if the flame had not disappeared. Elijah said in a very worried and frightened voice that holy magic had so easily destroyed the master's spell. The young prince calmly held his hand out in front of him at chest level and looking up, said that her magic represented healing and protection, and that she was full of the opposite of his dark magic. The girl resolutely put her fist to her chest and smiled broadly, saying that it didn't matter and he was still the strongest. She proudly said that no demon could resist his magic. But suddenly she thoughtfully took herself by the chin and began to talk about the Holy Church. The young prince looked away and said that all their people, who are engaged in completing other people's lives, possess strong holy magic. Alex turned his head away and closed his eyes, saying that there was nothing he could do about it, and in order to cope with them, he just needed to become stronger. The young prince snapped his fingers, and the magic dome that covered the island began to slowly dissipate. The sky over the city became bright again, and the mood of the residents of the city lifted. Alicia smiled broadly and said that at least they had a city that the church didn't know about. The girl smiled contentedly, and Alex agreed with this. The young prince thought that Julius and her family were establishing stable production of mithril, and if they could give an artifact that could withstand the leap, then this would greatly protect their city, and thanks to the artifacts, the supply of goods would occur instantly. Suddenly, a loud scream was heard from above. The young prince turned around and looked up, asking what it was. The girl also looked up and, shielding her eyes from the light, said that the noise was coming from the watchtower. Alicia pointed her finger to the side and called Alex. Pegasuses and a huge flock of ravens could be seen in the sky approaching the island. Someone asked if it was a flock of demonic ravens. Someone said that most likely not, and that after they were exterminated on the island, they did not appear again. When the Pegasi were already approaching the island, they saw Pegasi there and noticed people on them, which shocked them very much. Alex was very scared and tense, remembering how he had already seen people on Pegasus. The young prince abruptly turned around and waved his hand. He ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Alicia looked at him and shifted her eyebrows, and her gaze was very malicious. The brunette looked at the shooters and told them to be ready. She gave the command to aim at the Pegasi. Suddenly, Alicia screamed for Selena to wait and say that they were in the robes of the church. The young prince looked at her dumbfounded, thinking that this was not Iris. They looked at the man who was sitting on the Pegasus, and Alicia sternly said that this was for sure and there could be no mistake. Alex shifted his gaze forward and shifted his eyebrows. One of the girls sitting on the Pegasus looked very gloomy, and there were bruises under her eyes. The other one was smiling sweetly, but after that her smile stretched into an evil grin. They had a pair of sharp daggers and a crossbow with equally sharp arrows. Alicia put her hand out and told everyone to get their crossbows ready and that they needed to shoot down every Pegasus. The archers said they understood everything and were waiting for their command. The young prince shouted for them to stop. Alicia turned to him with a blank look, and Alex explained to her that it was possible that these were people not from the temple who were ending someone's life. After which the young prince told them not to shoot. The archers started shooting at the ravens, and when the birds fell to the ground, the archers rejoiced because of the feeling of victory. After a while, the Pegasi landed in front of the main entrance, where the girls were standing with the young prince. The three of them frowned and glared at the intruders. The girls who arrived came up to them. One of them put her palm on her chest with a smile and asked if he was His Highness Alec, the sixth prince of the empire. The young prince still stared at them sternly and said that they were right. Alicia covered her mouth with her hand and whispered to the young prince that these girls were incredibly strong holy magicians. Alex didn't even look at her and asked her to be quiet. He frowned harder and asked why they had come here. The cheerful girl said that they were sent to exorcise the devil from these lands. The second uninvited guest still looked gloomy, not taking her eyes off the young prince. Alex asked, very surprised about the devil, and Alicia looked at them with disbelief and a little wariness. Alex looked away and remembered the devil girl. The young prince imagined how the devil girl got very nervous, and he thought about what these two girls were saying about her. Alex looked away and frowned a little, thinking that he was an ordinary low-ranking demon and certainly not a devil. Alex looked at the uninvited guest, not very interested, and said that there was no devil here. The girl just smiled sweetly and said that devils are very good at lying. The young prince assured them that there could be no devil here. The second girl reached under her cape. She took out some kind of magic stone which had some kind of symbol painted on it. They said that in that case they would find him themselves. The girls shifted their eyebrows and with a menacing look abruptly put their hands forward, after which they pointed the stone at the young prince. Alex was a little scared of the stone and leaned sideways a little. The uninvited guests stared at him in shock, their mouths agape. The devil girl opened her mouth in fright so that all her fangs could be seen, and she squeezed her eyes shut. The uninvited guests looked at the young prince in surprise and incomprehension. Alex shifted his eyebrows in fright and turned his head to the side, covering himself with his hands, while opening his mouth a little. After that, the girls turned to each other, and one of them asked in shock what was the matter. One of the girls told the other to get ready. The other one said loudly that they had done everything right. Alicia laughed loudly and maliciously, placing her palm on her chest. She loudly said that they were not very smart and that they would not be able to expel her with such garbage. The brunette anxiously pointed her finger at them when the uninvited guest said that they needed to try again. They raised that magic one again and shouted for the devil to show himself to them. Bright light began to radiate from the stone again, and the young prince covered his face with his hand while closing his eyes. He asked with displeasure what kind of light it was and said he couldn't see anything. The uninvited guests looked at him in surprise. Alicia frowned in displeasure and said that it was very rude, after which she also asked with displeasure if they had forgotten that the prince was standing in front of them. The uninvited guests were a little taken aback and did not know what to answer. After that, the uninvited guests abruptly knelt down and bowed to the young prince on the floor, while stuttering a little apologized to him. Someone asked what kind of temple educates such rude women. Alicia looked at them with displeasure, saying that their position did not justify their behavior, after which she loudly asked why they were waving this stone here. The uninvited guests answered a little uncertainly that they had heard that the devil dwells here. The young prince frowned and looked at them sternly, saying that he had had enough. He asked if they were the people who ended the lives of others. The uninvited guests looked at Alex with a little surprise and incomprehension in their eyes. The young prince asked them with some concern if they had come to end his life. One of the uninvited guests looked angrily at the young prince, and placing her palm on his chest, loudly shouted that this was not true, and that they had come to destroy the devil. She said that they had never thought of ending the life of the bearer of the seal of darkness. Then she said loudly that they were exorcists. She wanted to say something else, but the second girl frowned and called out to her, thereby interrupting her so that she would not say more. The young prince thoughtfully took hold of his chin and thought that they were exorcists. The devil girl was very scared and also very nervous, clutching her hands to her chest and still closing her eyes. The young prince looked at them calmly and, placing his palm on his chest, said that he was not a demon. The uninvited guests looked at him in disbelief. One of the girls pursed her lips and said that the bodies of people with the seal of darkness are always captured by devils. The young prince was a little scared and looked at the uninvited guests with incomprehension. They lowered their heads, standing right in front of him. The girl said that everything was fine with the stone and there could be no mistake, and that he was the devil. The young prince was a little scared and tense at the same time. The uninvited guests took each other's hands. A sullen girl with black eyes said her name was Nate, and the second girl said very briefly that her name was Tika. They held hands tightly, saying it was time for them to start. The young prince became alert and shifted his eyebrows, clenched his fists. Alicia and the brunette were also wary when the uninvited guests said that they could not return empty-handed. The sullen girl sternly asked the young prince not to hold a grudge against them. The second one just frowned. Alicia and the brunette, who were standing next to him, grabbed their swords and pointed them at the intruders. The girls said that they had orders and they were obliged to complete the task. They raised their hands, on which they had bracelets, up and called the spell summoning the saint. Some kind of light appeared and a divine being appeared near them, and the uninvited guests asked him to grant them his power. The girls reached out with their hands to the divine being, their mouths wide open. The young prince crouched down in fright, looking at him. Suddenly, Alicia and the brunette rushed to the uninvited guests, and they were a little scared and wary. The young prince shifted his eyebrows and held out his hand to the side, while loudly telling the girls to stop immediately. The sullen girl swept her eyebrows and said that divine beings only attack devils. The young prince looked at them angrily, thinking that the summoning of the saint is a spell directly opposite to the magic of the summoning of the demon lord. And this creature will continue to attack until it destroys the demon. But on the other hand, if there are no demons nearby, it will be inactive. The sullen girl suddenly got a little nervous and asked the second girl if they had made a mistake, because they had never called him before. The second uninvited guest frowned and sternly said that the angel's eyes could not be deceived. The divine being opened his eyes and abruptly turned into some kind of scary and incomprehensible creature with 3 eyes and 2 swords in his hands. And instead of his tongue, he had 2 more hands with 4 fingers each. The sullen girl shouted that the angel had attacked, and the second one shouted that it meant that he was the devil after all. The young prince looked at the devil with his mouth open in fright, and Alicia and the brunette were very angry and wary. The divine being pointed his large and sharp sword at them, thereby attacking. There was some very bright magical power coming from the sword, and there was some very loud sound. The brunette clenched her teeth and put her hands forward, creating a magical shield. The young prince reached out to her with a frightened look when Alicia grabbed him. He looked at his hand in surprise and wondered why the dark magic hadn't activated. After that, the divine being crossed his arms over his chest, preparing for another attack. Alicia shielded the young prince and shouted that it was attacking again. Alex looked at her in fright, wondering what they should do. The young prince looked away and thought that he probably sensed the devil girl. The devil girl, with very frightened eyes and strong excitement, asked why he attacked, because she is actually a human being. The young prince mentally suggested that if she was expelled, then perhaps he would be able to negotiate, and the demon girl said that she was very scared. The young prince looked at the divine being and thought that he needed to be defeated, but he did not know how to do it. He thought that just seeing an angel was very rare, and nowhere was there a description of how to defeat him. The brunette was obviously having a hard time, so she grunted and gritted her teeth, closing one eye. The young prince frowned and thought that he was suppressing other people's magic with his holy aura, and golems would be of little use either. He raised his hand up and called out to Selena. The young prince summoned a fire barrier, thinking that he would not allow his comrades to be harmed. A magical dome formed above them and a divine being attacked them. The magic barrier split into small pieces that flew apart. The young prince was very shocked, and the brunette was sitting on the floor a little tired and worried, looking at the whole situation. Fragments of the barrier fell to the ground. The young prince looked at the divine being. He frowned and thought about how it had destroyed the barrier with one blow. Alex wondered if he even had a limit to his strength. Elijah thought that her magic was also useless and called out to the young prince in concern. Alex has created this magical barrier again. Alicia shouted at him to use the jump and take Selena away from here. The young prince said that nothing would work, and the divine being would not let him use the magic of darkness. The brunette became very ill and she bent over, clenching her teeth. The young prince looked worriedly in her direction, assessing the situation and thought about what he could do. Selena clenched her teeth and lifted her head, calling Alicia and Mr. Alec. Alicia worriedly told her that they would not leave her. The young prince thought that he had done nothing in his previous life, however. For the sake of his friends, he was using all his strength. Alex's hand trembled. Suddenly, the angel had several more pairs of hands, and now he had 8 of them, and each had a sword. Selena indignantly said that the angel had 2 hands, and that this could not be. The angel quickly rushed towards them and sharply attacked with all his swords. The fragments scattered in different directions, and there was very thick smoke in the air. Nate and Tika shouted that the devil had been defeated, but suddenly a hand appeared out of the thick smoke, reaching for them, and then small magical barriers became visible. The young prince looked maliciously and sternly at the uninvited guests, and dark magic emanated from his seal on his hand. These magical barriers managed to protect them from the attack of a divine being. Selena and Alicia looked at the whole situation in shock. Alex shifted his eyebrows and thought that if he squeezed the dark energy more tightly, the barrier of darkness would be able to hold back the attacks of this divine being, and that they would succeed now. The young prince shouted loudly that he would take care of the protection, after which he called out to Selena, telling her to concentrate on the spell. Selena straightened up and held the sword in front of her and began to cast a spell, summoning a flame that burned the very soul. After a while, she loudly shouted the spell Dragon Flame. She abruptly thrust the sword forward and it passed through the shield, and the flame rushed at the divine being. The uninvited guests looked at it in fright, their mouths wide open. A huge flame now enveloped the angel's entire body. Nate and Tika crouched down and covered themselves with their hands. The angel was burning with a strong flame. Feathers and some parts of his body fell off him. The young prince asked warily and hopefully if they had succeeded. The uninvited guests stared at the angel in shock, their eyes bulging, their mouths wide open. The angel's body was literally falling apart, and only his eye on his belly remained open. Alicia shouted loudly that the angel's core was not damaged, and that he would be able to recover soon. Selena said a little worriedly that there wasn't much damage due to holy magic. Selena suggested that she use Inferno. Alicia categorically refused, saying that she would destroy the island in this way. The young prince did not seem to be listening to them. He only smiled sweetly, and his thoughts were occupied by the demon girl. The demon girl said that they seemed to be in a desperate situation. After that, she smiled maliciously and said that even she understood it. Suddenly, Alex put his hand out and with a smile confidently told Selena to use the dragon flame and told Alicia to weaken his protection. Selena enthusiastically put her sword forward and called for the dragon flame, and Alicia began to weaken his defense. Suddenly, a wooden arrow shot at them. She flashed through Selena's hair and right in front of Alicia. Alicia stared in front of her in fright, and Selena turned back to where the arrow had come from. Tika was standing there, holding a crossbow with arrows in her hands. She sternly and maliciously said that they would not allow them to do this. Nate and Tika were holding edged weapons and were about to attack them. The uninvited guests looked at them menacingly and maliciously, and Nate said that devils are the main enemies of the church. Suddenly, someone was shouting that they would also help their master Alex. Archers appeared everywhere, pointing their weapons at the intruders, and armored guards ran out, covering Alex, Alicia, and Selene. They were ready to defend them from their enemies. The uninvited guests looked at them blankly. Nate and Tika were surrounded by knights, so they huddled together, looking in different directions. Tika told them not to bother them, and Nate screamed that they had only come to end the devil's life, and all this for the sake of saving the poor boy. Alex looked at them in surprise. The uninvited guests looked at the whole situation without much interest, after which Tika called out to Nate, and she said that she understood her. Together they raised their hands, which had a magic bracelet on their wrist, up. The young prince, Alicia, and Selene looked at them with frightened and wary eyes. They shifted their eyebrows and opened their mouths slightly as the core of the divine being began to glow brighter and brighter. The shards were flying in different directions and the light was getting brighter. Alicia called out to Selena very anxiously, near which there was a strong fire. Nate quickly rushed towards the young prince. She was clearly very aggressive. She was about to attack him with her daggers. Alex opened his mouth in fright and did not know what to do. Alicia shouted for the guards to grab them. Round projectiles flew from everywhere and they were pierced by arrows from Tiki's crossbow. The guards slipped on these shells. Nate opened her eyes and her irises turned out to be dark and her pupil on the contrary was white. She asked him not to take it too personally. The young prince looked at her very fearfully, his eyes bulging. Suddenly, abruptly, Nate began to attack the young prince and jumped up. She stared at Alex without emotion as he let out a silent scream. Alex held the protective barrier with his fingers and there were severe scratches on it. Nate stood on the shield and continued to strike one after another. Suddenly, the divine being recovered and Alex heard someone wheezing and looked at Nate in surprise. Her hand began to burn. Nate started burning up, not understanding what was going on. She dropped her daggers and her clothes caught fire too. Alicia looked at Selena uncomprehendingly and she frowned and said loudly that it wasn't her. The young prince looked at the whole situation with his mouth slightly open in surprise. He thought about how it could be the work of an angel. Tika called out to her very anxiously and loudly. Nate started spinning around and talking about how she wasn't a demon. The young prince shifted his eyebrows and shouted worriedly that the sacred flame should not harm a person, after which he ordered them to retreat. The uninvited guest continued to burn and repeat that she was not a demon. She lowered her head and said that she wasn't using dark magic after all. The young prince created a barrier of darkness and covered himself and the uninvited guest with it. She clutched her head and kept saying she wasn't the devil. Alex looked at the girl a little angrily and worriedly, and his eyes widened sharply, and he looked in surprise at the uninvited guest's hand. When the glove on the girl's hand burned, he saw the seal of darkness on it. The young prince approached the uninvited guest, continuing to stare in surprise at this seal on her hand. He wondered in his mind if there were people in the church who had the seal of darkness. The young prince began to remember the people from the monastery and thought that they had also talked about it. Alex looked at the pain-stricken girl and thought that perhaps they had become an exorcist against their will. The other girl with the crossbow looked at Nate a little sadly and disappointed while thinking about something. Alicia held Selina's shoulder, helping her to stand up, and asked if she could use the dragon flame again. Selina said yes. Alicia surreptitiously rushed past the girl with the crossbow. And she did not even notice Alicia, when suddenly her crossbow broke into pieces and the magic bracelet on her wrist also cracked and fell apart into small pieces. The uninvited guest looked very angrily and displeased at her broken crossbow, when suddenly, the second girl called out loudly to her, turning in her direction. The young prince looked at her blankly, thinking about something. Alicia shifted her eyebrows and said very menacingly that she would not allow them to aim at Mr. Alec. Alicia deftly swung her sword at the young girl and broke her blades. The magic bracelet on her arm also broke and crumbled into pieces. Alicia said that now they would not be able to use the angel, after which she called out to the young prince. The young prince smiled broadly and said it was a good job. Alicia turned to the divine being and said that they needed to end it. The young prince looked at Alicius warily and a little uncomprehendingly, his mouth slightly open. The young prince looked at Alicia and they met each other's eyes. Alicia was preparing to attack and created a magic ball. The young prince clenched his fists and was also ready to attack the angel. They were standing right in front of a divine being that was floating high in the air. The young prince thought that the magic of the divine being was much stronger than his own magic. Alex looked at the angel carefully and thought that even he had a weak spot, the core, and if he destroyed it, the angel would disappear. Alicia looked at the young prince, who was staring at the angel, and said that the preparations were complete. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard. The uninvited guests attacked Alicia and the young prince. Alicia reacted quickly and jumped on the girl, pinning her to the ground, and shouting loudly that she would not allow them to do this. Another uninvited guest wanted to attack the young prince with a slingshot with some pebbles. The young prince looked at the girl in fright, his eyes bulging. But suddenly someone unexpectedly created a wall of flame, and all the projectiles fired from the slingshot hit this magical wall and did not reach their target. The uninvited guest was taken aback by the unsuccessful attack and the unexpected obstacle. Selina enclosed herself in a magic dome, gritting her teeth. She called out to the young prince and said she wouldn't last long. Alex turned around and said seriously that he understood her. Alex closed his eyes and frowned, thinking that he had thought of leaving the holy magic to Alicia, but it seemed he had no choice. The young prince held out his hand to the side and summoned the holy light. After that, a magical bright ball formed above his hand. Alex stared intently at the ball, which was rapidly growing in size. The uninvited guests looked at what was happening warily. Tika asked if it was holy magic, and Nikai thought that holy magic should not teach an angel a lesson, and there was nothing to worry about. The magic ball has already grown to a huge size and has reached the angel. A very bright light was coming from the magic ball. Suddenly, there was a sound from the magic ball. The angel froze warily, and the young prince put 2 fingers to his lips and uttered the command, explosion. Suddenly, a very strange loud sound was heard from somewhere, and suddenly something cracked. Alicia and Selene looked at what was happening warily and a little uncomprehendingly. The upper bright layer of the magic ball cracked and its fragments scattered in different directions, and inside there was a magic ball of dark magic which was wrapped in chains. The angel was thrown aside. The chains made a strange sound and cracked. The ball caught fire. The divine being shone with a bright light so that only its outline was visible. A strong fire broke out, which was several times larger than the size of the island. The young prince bent his fingers a little, and the divine being literally began to fall apart, and many large cracks appeared on the magic ball. The young prince clenched his palm into a fist, the seal of darkness up, and said that this was a force capable of changing fate. The magic ball exploded with a very loud sound, and its pieces flew in different directions. Alex smiled very contentedly and a little calmly, after which he took hold of his wrist. Dark energy emanated from his seal of darkness, and the young prince thought that his dark magic would not lose to the angel. The devil girl watched this situation in shock, after which her lips stretched into a malicious smile, and she asked in surprise who he was since he possessed both dark magic and holy power at the same time. The young prince mumbled thoughtfully. Alex closed his eyes and tilted his head a little, calmly said that he was just a man. Suddenly, Alicia and Selena called out loudly to him. They hugged the young prince tightly, with a joyful smile on their faces. Alex felt a little cramped and uncomfortable from such proximity. Alicia said that their master had exceeded all their expectations, and Selena noticed that the young prince had dealt with the angel with one blow. Alex looked at them a little awkwardly, not knowing what to say. The intruders were being held by guards and they were clearly unhappy. Tika asked, a little tired and disappointed, if the angel had really lost to the devil. Nate was also a little sad and scared, a little uncertainly claiming that this could not be. They looked at their broken magic bracelets, the pieces of which were lying on the ground, and asked what they should do now. Alex turned to the uninvited guests and said with anger in his eyes that now they would deal with them. Alex sternly looked at the uninvited guests and frowned and said that his decision would depend on their answers. Alicia and Selena were also glaring at the girls. The uninvited guests were scared and a little tense when Alicia began to draw her sword. One of the girls turned to the young prince, saying that first she wanted to know if he was the devil or not. Alex was a little surprised and calmly said that this was not the case and that they were wrong, but he thought to himself that despite this, the angel attacked him. The young prince suggested that the divine being might have reacted to his seal of darkness. The girls confidently claimed that this could not be because they had already called on him several times. The girls raised their hands in the air. Nate took off her glove and they showed their hands, which had different seals of darkness on them. Alex was looking at the intruders. The young prince was very surprised that they also have seals. Selena asked, a little surprised, if the owner of the seal of darkness could be in the ranks of the church. Alicia covered her mouth with her hand and looked at Selena, saying that in fact, the exorcists are a separate organization. The young prince listened attentively and a little surprised to the girls when they said that they were sure that the young prince used the magic of darkness, but only the devil could possess it. Tika asked worriedly how he could stay sane. The girl confidently claimed that everyone who turned into the devil went crazy. The young prince did not remember himself very clearly in his previous life. Alicia immediately covered the young prince with herself, holding out her hand to the side. Alicia said it didn't matter what it was, because her master Alec was everything to her. Alex looked at Alicia in some surprise. Her look was very frightening and intense when she said that if someone tried to take it away from her, she would never forgive it. Alex looked at the girls with regret in his eyes and thought that the principles were firmly established in this country, that darkness is pure evil. He was tormented by the question of what had happened to them in the monastery. Tika lowered her head and said that they should end the devil's life because Mayuri was crying then. Alex calmly and at the same time with interest asked the girls about who Mayuri was. The girls were wary, looking at the young prince, and there was a slight sadness in their eyes. They recalled how when they were little, a woman sternly told them to hide the seal so that no one would see it. The scared girls always agreed with her, and the woman told them angrily to remember it and not get caught. Young girls have always helped this woman by following her. They were ridiculed by residents who were clearly aggressive against them, and when this woman treated the girls, she said that now they should understand that it was dangerous. When the girls were older, this woman continued to tell them that many residents in the city hated them because of the seal and they should be careful. The girls said that Mayuri was so strict, but very kind, and giggled together about it. Despite Mayuri's strictness, the girls had fun with her, for example, when they returned home with shopping and laughed sweetly. Mayuri also had the seal of darkness, and she told the girls that if they became exorcists, they would no longer be afraid of them and they would always have money. Mayuri tossed the apple up and said that they would have personal magic teachers, and the main thing was to understand the elements. One of the girls was saying that she was good at fire magic, and the other was holding a bow up and saying that she was good with a bow. Nate enthusiastically said that she would try to become stronger as soon as possible, and Mayuri, with a sweet and kind smile, told Tika to try too. The girl took off her glove and thought about what she might be able to do now. She looked at her seal with a slightly disappointed smile, thinking that it couldn't be read. When Mayuri walked with the girls past a man addicted to alcohol, she told them to remember that you always need to be focused, and in no case use the magic of darkness. Suddenly, a sharp and loud bang was heard. One of the girls fell to the ground and the second one anxiously approached her. Mayuri glared at the drunk, who asked about the darkness. The man grabbed the girl's wrist hard and asked if she had the seal of darkness. Mayuri and Nate, worried and very scared, called out to Tika when the angry man lifted Tika up by the wrist. Nate quickly reached out to help her. Mayuri, with a very frightened look, began to apologize to the man for bumping into him, and in her mind she thought that she stank of alcohol very much. Nate pulled an arrow, pointing it at the man, and told him to let go of Tika. Mayuri screamed loudly for Nate to stop immediately. Nate fired, but she missed and hit the hotel sign located behind the head of this huge man. The man turned and looked at the sign. Mayuri shouted at them to be careful. The man looked at the girls very angrily, after which he threw Tika into Mayuri's arms, and she grabbed her by the waist, closing her eyes a little. A man with a cold weapon in his hands wanted to attack Nate. He shouted that they were dirty, useless people, while saliva flew out of his mouth. The blonde girl shouted her name, and at that moment Alex, with a menacing look, pointed his hand towards the man. The guy's eyes were scared. The man's head came off abruptly, while a grimace remained on his face, which screamed and sobbed fear of the situation. The two girls watched it all with tears in their eyes and spoke each other's names. From the dark mass in the air, a request was issued for the girls to run, and it was pronounced with a stutter that he could not restrain himself. The girls looked at what was happening with horror and tears in their eyes. The dark-haired woman with noticeable pain in her eyes and with tears wanted to ask for something, but suddenly Tika grabbed a sword and headed towards the dark-haired woman. The blonde girl uttered Tiki's name in horror and with a scream. Then a voice was heard saying to end her life. Tika said longingly that when she stabbed her in the chest, the girl fell down and thanked her. A blonde girl with bruises under her eyes was looking at Tiki. The girl further said that after that they were ordered to come here. And that's why they have to end the lives of devils, for the sake of saving human souls. The young prince listened to them with fright, and the girls wanted to tell about Alex's appearance. The question of whether they were doing the right thing ran through their memories. The girls started shouting that they were forced to work for the temple, threatening to destroy the monastery. The blonde girl looked indignantly and asked if the gentleman really wanted them to forgive him. Alex thought about it after saying that. The girl called out to the young prince. The girl looked at the gentleman with concern and said that he was not a bad person and asked him to make a fair decision. Suddenly, the voice of the gentleman rang out that he had made a decision. Two young girls anxiously watched and listened to the gentleman. The young prince only managed to say so, as the girl immediately interrupted him, saying that they were ready to accept any punishment and that they wanted to end his life while addressing the master. One of the girls began to speak with regret in her eyes, and the other continued with tears in her eyes, saying that because of this they are the devils. They tried not to look into the master's eyes. Two girls suddenly fell to their knees and began to say that they were entrusting their lives to him. The cross falls and breaks, and in my head is the memory that the girls will soon meet Mayuri. The two young girls were still kneeling in front of the gentleman. Alicia glared at the intruders and abruptly walked towards them, telling them to get ready. The girl with brown hair covered the frightened eyes of the gentleman. The uninvited guests squeezed their eyes shut and clenched their teeth, expecting a blow from a blonde girl. The young prince quickly removed his hand from his face and stood in front of the nuns, covering them with himself, while shouting that Alicia had stopped. The girl looked at the gentleman uncomprehendingly. Suddenly, the blonde girl had an idea, and she enthusiastically said that it was necessary to find out information before that. The blonde with a serious face asked who sent them here, and Alicia warned that if they told, they would die faster. The nuns looked at them without any emotion and replied that they could not tell this, and they added that they had taken an oath that they would never reveal the identity of the master. Alex was surprised that they had come here, ready to give up their lives just to keep the name of their employer a secret. Alicia turned to the gentleman and said that the decision was up to him. Alex accepted this information. After a little thought, the prince said that they could not let the nuns go and therefore they had two options. At that moment, while the prince was saying all this, the nuns were anxiously waiting for his decision. Alex began to explain with a serious face that the first option was to let Alicia end their lives, and the second option was to become his followers. The girls were surprised by this news and asked if he was really suggesting that they betray the church. A girl with brown hair anxiously called out to the young prince, and Alicia, with a scream and fright, said that it was impossible since they had come here to end his life. Alex listened attentively to the nuns' answer that they could not, because if they found out about it, all their friends would end their lives in the monastery. The blonde girl turned to the prince and said that she agreed with Alicia's words, since these are people who end other people's lives, who came through his life, and if you trust them, they can betray him. Alex seriously said that signing a contract was not just a verbal agreement, and that he could take their lives at any moment if they decided to betray him, then their days were numbered. He held out his hand to them, and his gaze was very stern. Alex went on to say that it was better to accept his offer, since running for life is not a decision, and told them to think about what would be best for them. The girls looked at the gentleman suspiciously, and they asked why he was trying so hard to save them. Alex uncomprehendingly asked why it was strange, to which they replied that he was too kind, and supplemented by saying that they had come to end his life. Alex thought about their words and his mood immediately changed, and he frowned. Alicia, Selena, and the dark-haired girl were having fun, and the young prince was smiling sweetly at them. He wants to create a place where everyone could be happy. People with the seal of darkness, demons who help people at work, and also intelligent monsters like golems. Alex stood in front of the uninvited guests, Nate and Tika, saying that he wants to create a place where absolutely everyone would be welcome, a place where you can live happily. The girls listened to Alex with a little surprise and interest. They also asked in surprise if people with the seal of darkness could live happily. The young prince mumbled a little and said that this also applies to their friends from the monastery, if they wanted, of course. Nate looked at Tika warily. Tika pressed her hand to her chest and said with a frown that Mayuri sacrificed her life for them. Nate enthusiastically said that this was exactly the case and they could not end their lives now. Tika frowned and said that they were only inferior servants, and Tika opened her eyes a little and added that they were sent to end his life. They abruptly grabbed their hoods and took them off, calling out to Alex. The young prince looked at them in surprise. Tika earnestly asked the young prince to sign a contract with them. Nate also seriously said that they are ready to serve him for the rest of their lives. A kind smile appeared on the young prince's face and he confidently agreed to their proposal. He held out his hand to them. The girls raised their hands at the level of their foreheads, and the young prince touched their fingertips. The girls were lifted a little into the air, which they were a little surprised at, and opened their mouths a little. The young prince said that from now on they are his followers. The girls were shocked to say that this was an incredible force and asked where such power came from. The girls looked at their seals of darkness on their hands. Alex was a little surprised and thought about it. He began to explain. The young prince said that Tiki has a crescent moon seal and he specializes in stealth. And Nate has a shadow stream seal, and it is not as strong as the crescent moon, but it is very useful when hunting and in battle. The girls looked at their seals with interest. The young prince said with a smile that they shouldn't worry, because both of their seals are very useful. The girls said in surprise and enthusiasm that they would try their best. Nate said Tika hadn't figured out her seal yet. Tika, a little offended, began to turn the tables on her, but Nate said that the young prince said that she would be useful in battle. The demon girl said that they had a strange smell coming from them, and Alex thought that no one had asked her. Alicia was a little displeased. Selena took herself by the chin and said that they are both well-trained people who end the lives of others. Alicia was a little worried. She said she couldn't trust them, but she was an example of the young prince's decision. She asked him to give her the opportunity to observe them first. The young prince was a little surprised, but he thought that Alicia was just worried about him. The young prince said that he understood her. And Alicia looked at the girls a little angrily and said loudly that if they did anything suspicious, she would immediately take their heads off. The girls were scared and stuttered a little, saying they understood her. Nate and Tika said they wouldn't disappoint him. Alicia very menacingly and frighteningly told them to treat the young prince more respectfully and she would train them well. The girls stuttered in agreement. The young prince and Selena watched them with a smile. After a while, night fell. Trickles of water were pouring out of a small fountain. The young prince was sitting in the water a little wearily. He thought about the fact that he had no strength left after the battle and sighed. He was thinking that according to Tiki, this order for the end of his life was made by a member of the Saints' Church, and the church itself is located in Barrios. Tika said that they did not meet directly, but received a letter with instructions. The young prince recalled that Nate had said that they did not like people with the seal of darkness, and therefore they did not talk to them directly. She explained that they had just been given the details of the task, to destroy the devil and end the prince's life. They told a little nervously that while they were flying through Tyrus, they came across a whole bunch of dangerous demons, and when they finally found a settlement, they couldn't even hold back a smile. Alicia asked the girls if this meant that there was no evidence of the church's involvement in the assassination attempt on the prince. The girls confidently agreed with this. The young prince thought that before his rebirth, his father ruled in Barrios, but on the day when the rebellion began, he tried to get rid of the emperor. Nate said a little sadly that the number of ministers in the church is already about 10,000. Alex thoughtfully took himself by the chin and thought about this figure of 10,000, representing a huge number of divine beings. Selena said with a smile that he was obviously tired and suggested that he go to the baths today, saying that it helps to relieve fatigue well. So the young prince found himself in the bathhouse, which was filled with hot steam. The young prince was lying relaxed in the water. He closed his eyes, thinking that it was very pleasant. There was a beautiful chandelier on the ceiling, near which steam was flying, and drawings of angels were engraved on the walls. The young prince said that the design is quite strange. The young prince looked at the moon, which was visible through the ceiling, and thought that it was very pleasant for him to relax alone. He remembered himself in a previous life and thought that back then he was afraid of loneliness. The young prince recalled that he was always alone when he was studying or training. All his efforts were in vain and no one cared about him at all. He was afraid to be alone forever and he wanted at least someone to notice him. This worried the guy very much and he did not leave a feeling of anxiety. The young prince raised his head up and with a sincere happy smile thought that everything was fine now and now he had real friends. The young prince remembered Alicia, Alec, Julius and Tia. How embarrassed they are standing up, covered only with a towel, as well as Nate and Tiku who were also embarrassed. The young prince remembered the girls with a smile, thinking that they were with him now. He did not notice how the girls entered the bathhouse and silently looked at him. The young prince was clearly enjoying his thoughts. He wondered why they were without everything. Alex opened his eyes a little and saw 4 girls in front of him who were wearing only towels and shyly covering their bodies. The young prince, embarrassed and a little scared, sank a little deeper into the water and thought about why every time he takes a bath, he imagines them without clothes. Alicia noticed that if you go into the water for a long time, you can drown. The young prince finally noticed the girls, who were smiling shyly at him, and Nate and Tika were giggling quietly. Alicia put her hands on her cheeks and smiled sweetly, saying that the bathroom was not very big, and it looked like only she and the young prince could fit. The young prince was taken aback when he realized that they were actually standing in front of him without clothes. The dark-haired girl indignantly shouted that it wasn't fair and that she wanted it too. Tika covered her mouth with her hand and said it was very sweet. Nate smiled and looked at Tika, saying that she was right and the young prince was very cute. The young prince, embarrassed and indignant at the same time, retreated to the corner of the bathtub. He loudly asked why they were in the men's bathroom. The girls continued to stand and stare at the young prince. Alex put his hand forward and tried to use the jump command. He was very surprised when it didn't work. The young prince turned away and looked at his hand. Dumbfounded, he asked why the magic wasn't working and suggested that it might be because of the hot water. The girls glared at him angrily. Alicia said menacingly that this water was impregnated with holy magic. The young prince looked at them in fright and asked in surprise if this was their plan. Alicia's eyes shone, and she held out her hand to him, snickering at him. Alicia offered the young prince to wash his back. Alex was alerted by this, and he looked at them a little scared and embarrassed, imagining how maniacally she wanted to rub his back. Alex frowned at them and indignantly asked why they wanted to wash with him so much. The demon girl covered her mouth with her hand and smiled maliciously, asking if he still hadn't understood. She told him to think of it as a reward. Alex's cheeks were covered with a strong blush, and he said that although he looked like a child, he was well over 20 years old. The demon girl smiled broadly and crossed her legs, saying that while he had the opportunity, he needed to enjoy the moment. The young prince grunted a little displeased, gritting his teeth. Alicia took off her towel, left completely without any clothes covering her, and sat behind the young prince, hugging him by the shoulders. The young prince was greatly embarrassed by such proximity and shrank down, trying to somehow cover his body. The dark-haired girl also took off the towel and sat down in front of the young prince and began to lather his legs and tummy. Alex was both embarrassed and very uncomfortable with the fact that a girl without clothes was touching his body. Tika and Nate sat down next to the young prince on each side and began to lather his body with a smile. There was a slight blush on their cheeks. Alex opened his mouth slightly and tried to hide from them with his hands, tucking his knees a little. Selena clenched her hands into fists and frowned. She looked very menacing and indignant. She mumbled loudly and said she was very excited. She shouted loudly that she would not rest until she washed the young prince's back. The water in the tub bubbled. The dark-haired girl screamed loudly that she was very hot and asked Selena to wait. Alicia screamed loudly that there was boiling water. Selena became alert, looking at the girls in surprise. Tika and Nate said it was already a sauna. The young prince thought that one would not get bored with such friends. The young prince thought that they were already close to creating a strong state. It was the middle of the night outside, and the stars were visible in the sky. Alex thought that they needed to understand what the church was up to, and they shouldn't make rash decisions. He lowered his head thoughtfully and took his chin in his hand, thinking that it was possible to create an operational point in the capital. So far, the girls were very hot, and they looked at each other with displeasure, and only Selena felt very good. He thought he might ask for help from him. After a while, the day came and lush clouds floated in the sky. Someone called out to Mr. Virtus. One of the male servants with a scar on his face put his hand on his chest and said that someone wanted to talk to him and that he called himself his brother. Mr. Virtus seriously asked about his brother and confidently said that he did not know or remember such people. His servant with a scar on his face said that this man wanted to talk to him about money. Mr. Virtus looked at this servant with interest. He had blonde hair and slightly dark skin. He thought about it and didn't say anything at first. Mr. Virtus grinned maliciously and turned to his servant, asking if it was the young Prince Alex. There was obvious interest in his eyes. There were a bunch of different animal people lying next to Mr. Virtus who were clinging to Mr. Virtus.